Welcome to Everyone Loves Guitar, where we sit down and talk with interesting professional guitar players, uncover their stories, and discover what makes them tick. If you love guitar, music, and the backstory of people's lives, stick around. You're in the right place. This episode of Everyone Loves Guitar is brought to you by Taylor Guitars and their new Grand Pacific Round Shoulder Dreadnought. Powered by Taylor's breakthrough V-Class bracing system, the Grand Pacific gives you a warm, seasoned sound with clear low-end power and notes that are stronger, longer sustaining, and more in tune with each other all the way up the fretboard. Make sure you check it out online at taylorguitars.com, then go out and play one today. That's the new Grand Pacific at taylorguitars.com. Did you know if your instrument or any of your gear is damaged, broken, or stolen outside your home, your homeowner's insurance policy will not cover any of it? That's right. Homeowner's insurance only pays if something happens inside your home. But Music Pro Insurance insures all your music gear, no matter where it is, anywhere in the world, even when you check it in as baggage on an airline. Here, let me give you some examples. Let's say you're in a car accident and your equipment is damaged, you're covered. Your kid pours apple juice into your amplifier, covered. Someone spills beer all over your pedal board at a gig somewhere across the world, boom, you're covered. Any kind of theft or accidental damage is covered, even water damage from hurricanes and breakage from earthquakes. But here's what makes Music Pro really different. They're not going to argue with you over the value of your instrument or make you run around looking for receipts when it comes time to paying your claim. They know exactly why your vintage instrument is worth 10 times more than a new one. Plus, all claims are typically paid and fully settled in 24 to 48 hours. So if your equipment is not insured properly, go to musicproinsurance.com, hit standard, then enter your information and get a free gear protection estimate. Don't be that player who ignores this, and then next month when something happens, you're wondering why you didn't take 10 minutes to do this properly. Make sure you go to musicproinsurance.com, enter your information, and get a free gear protection estimate. If something happens, you will be thanking me. Trust me on this. musicproinsurance.com. The Be Fulfilled Journal helps you be more honest with yourself and with others, and be more open to handling things you've avoided dealing with for years. It's a 12-week online and journal program that helps you identify and eliminate things you do that are causing you stress and live in more gratitude and joy. It was actually developed by a long-term friend of mine who got sober in 2008, and he's put together a great deal just for my listeners. You get the 300-page hardcover journal and access to the 12-week video program online, plus free shipping, plus membership in a private Facebook support group with others going through the program, plus a 5-day mini course showing you how to let go of stuff that's draining your energy, plus a 30-day 100% money-back guarantee. To start your journey and get all the bonuses, go to BeFulfilledJournal.com/ELG. That's BeFulfilledJournal.com/ELG. For information about advertising on Everyone Loves Guitar, including information on geographically targeted ads, go to everyonelovesguitar.com/advertise. That's everyonelovesguitar.com/advertise. Hey everybody, this is Craig Garber. Welcome to Everyone Loves Guitar. And man, this is a really cool show we're doing here because I'm actually live. We're going to talk to Andy Powers today. He's a master guitar builder and designer at Taylor Guitars. I'm actually in the Taylor Guitar office in San Diego. So this is really cool. This has been a great experience. And let's get into this because Andy's a really interesting guy and he's a brilliant luthier. Again, he's a master guitar designer at Taylor Guitars, which means he's in charge of all new guitar development as well as ongoing refinement of Taylor's existing product line. His experience as a luthier and a second-generation woodworking craftsman, along with a rich history as an acoustic guitar player and aficionado, gives him a unique vantage point as a master guitar builder. Bob Taylor himself actually asked Andy to join Taylor back in 2011. Bob had been an admirer of Andy's guitar building work in the San Diego area, and he respected Andy's philosophy of guitar and tone. At the time, Andy was designing and making flat top, arch top, and electric guitars as well as ukuleles. His superb craftsmanship helped him develop an impressive client list of local and international musicians, and his work was highly respected by fellow luthiers. In fact, Bob Taylor has gone on record saying he feels Andy is, and I quote, the best guitar builder I've ever met, which is pretty impressive coming from Bob Taylor. And it's no wonder why. Andy's background is actually, he's one of these guys that, you know, like Tiger Woods started playing golf at age 5. That's kind of like Andy's that sort of background. He's originally from Oceanside, California. His dad was a carpenter and his mom was an artist, and both of them were actually hobbyist musicians. Andy got his first workbench as a young boy, and he began playing piano and guitar around the same time. He started building guitars at, check this out, 7 or 8 years old. And by his early teens, he found his guitar building voice was selling instruments, and the demand for his handmade guitars actually blew up. And I found out, we were talking earlier, that he started gigging at age 11, which is pretty impressive. Andy approaches building guitars really like he's an artist, and the instruments that he makes are his canvas. He also graduated from the University of California at San Diego with a degree in music and with an emphasis on guitar performance. Andy's never made a living at doing anything else other than building and selling guitars. So if you're going to buy an acoustic guitar or get advice on tone and sound related to an acoustic guitar, I will tell you right now, he's definitely the guy you want to listen to. So pay close attention to this interview. And if you're ever at Taylor, the coffee here is wonderful, man. So, Andy, thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
It's my pleasure.
Thanks so much for coming on the show.
Thanks for coming out and visiting us.
It's great.
It's a lot of fun.
There's a lot of fun here, man. You know, it's funny. Last night I went out. People had winter coats on.
Well, yeah, it's freezing outside.
Even for me, I was like, it's perfect weather for me. This is like mid 60s.
Yeah, this has been an unusual winter for us. I mean, most of the time it'll rain once or twice before Christmas, a few times afterwards, but this has been unusually cold and wet. So we're all kind of feeling our own version of that SADS, you know, the seasonal affect disorder. I mean, my wife's been wearing like tank tops with a scarf. So, you know, we kind of get that. Like, wow, we get to put like a coat and a scarf on over our T-shirt. This is pretty weird. Pretty odd here.
I hear you, man. Well, it's beautiful for me, I'll tell you. Hey, so question for you. Your focus for building guitars is like, you know, you're obviously laser focused on it and you were successful at it early on, yet you went to school to still pursue a degree in music. I was curious what made you do that.
Well, I like your intro said, I've always been interested in music. It's been this thing that I just loved, and I've always been playing, I've always been building, and so I enjoy that. And I mean, I wasn't, to me, I wasn't a great student. Like I don't have the study habits that my brother and sister did. I did fine in school, so I had a scholarship to study. So I thought, okay, well, at UCSD at the time, there was a bunch of really great musicians who were still active and teaching there. And so I wanted to spend some time with those folks. Like I said, I had a scholarship too, so it was pretty close, pretty easy.
Yeah.
And it's really close to this one particular surf spot that I love. So
there you go.
You know, that kind of made that choice pretty easy. The funny thing is, even while I was there, most of my time I'd end up spending building and repairing and selling instruments to my teachers or my classmates or those kinds of folks. So
going to school was lead generation for you.
Yeah, it's just it was fun. You get to learn things that you wouldn't otherwise learn. You know, some of the things that you don't really enjoy doing then or at the time, and you realize how valuable they were after the fact.
Yeah, sure.
You know, they say, hey, hindsight's 20/20.
Definitely.
So you realize, why in the world do I need to learn a rhythm this complicated with all these nested quintuplas or whatever? You go, I'm like driving myself mad doing this arithmetic to try and play this rhythm correctly. And you realize, oh, by the time I go back and play with my band, man, 4/4 timing is really easy. Since ain't no prob. I could do that all day long.
Gotcha.
You know, so some of those things, it just expands what you get to do and the way that you think about things.
One thing I'm hearing is that you really went there for curiosity and passion, and I give you a lot of credit because it seems like you've lived almost your whole life with those things governing that. And honestly, man, that's a real, that's a gift that you gave yourself, and that's...
Yeah, I don't know that I'd say I gave it to myself. I'd credit my parents with that, actually.
Yeah.
When I was growing up, I actually didn't attend like a regular public school until I graduated high school. I was one of those weird homeschool kids.
Yeah.
From the time I was real young. And that teaches you some interesting things. One of them is that, well, you get a pretty good work ethic because you realize I've got to get this work done, and I can make that take all day, or I can get it buckle down and get it done in an hour or two, and then I get to do what I'm interested in. So you learn that. But my folks really spent a lot of time encouraging me to pursue what I was interested in. They went, hey, you like guitars. Great. Go hang out at the guitar shop. You like music. Okay, let's make music available. You want to take lessons on this? Okay, great. Let's try and make that happen. And so I got to do a lot of those things and let my curiosity drive where I was trying to go. Because when you're young and you have a natural inclination and a natural interest in something, well, no one's really going to tell you to not pursue it at that point because there's nothing riding on it. You don't have to make rent. You know where your next meal's coming from. Yeah. That's a great time in life to go, hey, I'm interested in this. I'll find out about it. I'll learn everything I can about it. And so I have this kind of a natural curiosity in a lot of things.
Sure.
And you learn the process of running with that and learning what you need to know to further that. That's a pretty exciting place to live.
It is a very exciting place. And I give you all the, with your parents, whatever, but you guys, it's great that you've done that. That's, by the way, the number one. People ask you, what do you find is the number one thing successful guitar players have in common? It is that parental support. Even if and you have families where there's dysfunction or alcoholism or addiction or stuff like that, where the parents supported it, it's like 99+% of all the people I've interviewed.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. So you look at almost any great musician, and behind that, there has to be enough of a lifestyle that encourages or supports that to make it happen. Like, I don't think that we should be putting different aspects of our lives in different buckets and kind of silo different things. In a lot of ways, no one can do that, at least not well. All the different aspects of a person's life, I think, end up blending together. Like they all exist within this one context, right? It's the life that you live. So sometimes as a musician, you could look at practical things like, well, you sound this way today because of what you ate last night and how much coffee you drank this morning and all those things. Well, your family, your home life, your work life, the last record you listened to, all of those different aspects, they all influence what you're doing, how you're going to approach something, what you're going to learn about it, what your next move will be. It's one of the things I love about music. Any piece of artwork, really, it's like a snapshot, like a Polaroid of what that artist is like at that very minute. Right.
It's like I was an accountant. It's a terrible analogy. Bring accounting into music, but it's like a balance sheet or an income statement of where, which is a snapshot of right then and there. What's the state of this union? Right. Because you'll hear a great record and go, well, this musician at the time had been influenced by these musicians growing up. They had these life experiences. They were living in this area, and they had been looking at this other visual artwork, and they had this inspiration that went, wow, okay, here is an amazing piece of work that just perfectly captures the identity of that artist at that time. Yeah. Some of those are such high-level pieces where they become timeless. Like one of my favorite records is Miles Davis' Kind of Blue. Right. You look at that piece and go, okay, maybe it sounds cliche to love that because so many people highly regard it. So it's hipster to try and find something more off the beaten path, I guess. But
you listen to that piece of work and go, this is as fresh and modern now as it was then. And every note on this has this incredible artistic vision that seems... It's the perfect example of what Emerson was writing about when he said that perpetual modernity was the measure of merit of any work of art. Where you look at this thing, go, whatever era I put this into, it's absolutely brilliant.
Yeah.
Well, at the time, that was a perfect picture of Miles' work.
Right.
You know, and all those guys, like at the zenith of what they were doing right then. It's an amazing piece.
Yeah. Very true, man. Very true. Let me ask you, as far as building guitars goes, what do you like most about building guitars, and what are the biggest challenges both in the construction and in the business aspect of that?
Wow, that's a lot of question. That's a whole bunch all in one. If I would start with what I love about it,
yeah,
I don't even really know how to address that, because there is so much that goes into an instrument, into a guitar, and every one of those parts has really unique charms. Like, I have an affinity for sharpening tools. You know, it sounds like one of the chop wood, carry water parts.
No,
but you learn these ancillary efforts where you go, there is a beauty and an art form to making a tool ready for its task.
Right.
There's a beauty and an art form in taking material and rough milling it, drying it, seasoning it, preparing it for what you want to do. There's a beauty and an art form to designing what it is and asking these materials to do what they naturally want to do. Choose the materials appropriately, like they were ingredients in a recipe.
Right.
To build something that just inherently wants to do what a musician is asking of it. All of those things are incredible. I mean, some, I guess, are more fun than others. I've spent a lot of time covered in sawdust on hot, sweaty days. You get a little itchy, it gets a little,
but let me ask
little
you a question.
tiring.
Doesn't that feel good in a sense? Like,
oh yeah,
that to me, that would be like, here's the like from a manly kind of standpoint, it's like, yeah, man, here's the sweat of my brow.
Yeah,
it's like evidence of
a day's work well done.
Yeah. I would like that.
Yeah, even that, you learn to appreciate doing the work.
Yeah, right.
I mean, it's one of the most valuable things that any of us could someday get, is being content with the work that's in front of you. So there is a real satisfaction to taking a giant chunk of wood, sawing this thing up, planing it straight, getting good prepared edges, and by the end of your day, turning this big unruly hunk of material into a carefully prepared, neatly stacked, straight pile of material, big stack of wood that's ready for step number 2. Like, right. Man, that feels good. There's a very tangible, visible result from your labor.
Are you, I would think you're very production oriented. Like, when I say you get, do you tend to like measure your output or measure, like when you could see what you've done, it makes you feel good, when you.
Yeah. I can be like that.
Yeah.
I mean, that's something I enjoy, is looking at what you accomplished in the course of a day or a week and go, yeah, that was good.
Yeah, right.
I made the most of those hours.
That's what I mean. Yeah, because
I got the most out of that. There are times when it's difficult to quantify, or it's not as visible. It's not as easy.
Right. Yeah. When you're not stacking wood, when you're designing something and you had to get a curve
just right, and you spend
8 hours.
You spend a week working out the exact shape that something should be.
I totally get that.
Well, it doesn't look like you accomplished much, but that was still part of designing or building that thing. And so, you accomplished what you needed to. Right.
Yeah. And then you have to kind of like you have to walk yourself through that. Because I know, like with me, I'll have stuff like that. it's nicer to see the pile of wood.
Yeah.
But you have to tell yourself, hey, man, this is part of the process. And,
Yeah, it's a tricky balance because as much as I like seeing a neatly stacked pile of wood and going, yeah, job well done.
Right.
Some of my more valuable moments have been spent after largely frustrating days.
Yeah.
Or in the wake of a frustration or in the wake of some uncertainty where it allows you to step far enough back, reconsider what was in front of you, and figure a new way around it.
Yeah.
And that's how a lot of good change happens. Like if everything is really going splendid, there's no reason to change course.
No reason to change. Yeah.
Like, just keep moving, man. Things are good. You got a straight highway ahead of you. Keep going. Right. Put some miles in there. Yeah. And sometimes you enter these times or these roadblocks where you end up pulling a long ways back and scratching your head a while and going, I'm going about this the wrong way, but I'm not even sure which way I should turn next. I don't know how to get around this thing. Let me just explore a little. Let me try some things. I'll throw them away. Reconsider what I've already done. Maybe I need to backtrack a ways. So I think a lot of musicians go through that as well.
Yeah,
I mean, how many times have you heard a musician talk about a record they're making, and they get almost all the way through to mixing, mastering, or whatever. They step away to do a short tour or something. They come back and listen again, realize, you know what, this just isn't it.
Right.
This isn't exactly what I want to say. It's not what I want to express to listeners. Let me go all the way back to the beginning, rewrite some lyrics, record some parts, or just scrap it entirely and try again.
Right,
it's like I executed these things, but the concept was these realizations deviated from the concept a lot, and it doesn't match. I need to try again.
Are you good with because as I've gotten older, I'm like when stuff happens, I'm like a lot more zen about it. I'm like, okay, this is whereas when I was younger, I'd be like, man, this sucks. And I'd try to muscle stuff through it. Now when stuff happens, I'm like, okay, this is going to lead to the next kind of breakthrough. Are you optimistic like that now?
Yeah. I mean, I tend to be a pretty optimistic person anyway. So I've seen a lot of things go wrong and look at them and think, well, that's a really good learning experience. That's going to teach me something I need to know.
Right.
Let's backtrack and work our way around.
Okay, yeah.
Like I forget what book I read, but the author in this book made the point of saying we don't live by the facts of our existence, we live by the sense we make of them.
Yeah.
And that makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Where you look at, take, let's say 5 different things, or even one single event. Maybe you crash a car. You could look at that as potentially the biggest setback that you had experienced, because then you had to make this and it made you miss a rent payment and it did like all these things that could have come of that. Or you could look at that one incident and go, actually, that taught me this incredible thing and it set me on a new path and I learned these
gratitude about living.
Yeah,
being alive and being smarter on the road.
Yeah, it's a lot about your perspective on how you approach those different things.
Right.
And so there certainly were times, especially when I was young, if I didn't get the result I wanted, that was a huge frustration.
Right.
It was a bummer. And slowly that happens. You experience enough bummers.
Yeah.
To go, actually, those challenges are what I'm learning most from. So I don't want to...
Tuition is not free.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like the very first time I tried to build a guitar as a kid, it blew up.
Like literally blew up?
Literally blew up.
How did it blow up?
Because I didn't know what I was doing. Like the first time I tried building a guitar as a kid, my dad's a carpenter. He would bring home scraps of wood. And he was building a mantle at somebody's house where he was working. He brought home this scrap of wood, and I was all stoked because he comes home and goes, "Hey, I got you a big one today. Rad, this is great. What am I going to make from it?" And I was pretty obsessed with guitars, so I thought, oh, I'll build a guitar. That'd be great. Well, it wasn't really a guitar. It was more like a guitar-shaped object.
Right.
Because I was a kid. I didn't know what I was doing. I wasn't even allowed to use all the tools in the garage. You know, there's that sliding scale where you use the safer ones first, and
yeah, of course,
you prove yourself trustworthy, then you learn how to use the next more dangerous thing on the list.
Totally.
So I tried to build this guitar, and it was literally like nails that I tried to glue in place for frets. I had 6 mismatched tuning keys that I'd begged from the local music shop. I had a used set of guitar strings to put on it, you know.
It was used set of guitar strings.
Yeah, it was like, well, my dad changed the strings on our family's guitar, and I got to keep the old ones. So I put those on. I, start tuning the thing up, and it just explodes. I didn't know what was supposed to be on the inside. I didn't know that it needed braces. I didn't know how strong the parts had to be. I didn't know any of it. All I knew was that it had to be hollow and you need a hole in it so the sound can come out. Right? So that was about the extent of my knowledge. And it blew up. I mean, literally just splintered. And that was a drag because I had been working on that in the garage for weeks.
I would imagine.
I mean, I was a kid, so I was all super into it. And to see it burst in a matter of seconds,
what a great story, though.
What just happened?
For anybody listening, I mean, your first guitar blew up, and now you're the master builder and building literally some of the finest instruments in the world. And that's pretty inspirational.
Yeah, it's wonderful. But I think it was because it broke that I was curious enough to try again.
Yeah.
So you look at that and go, what just happened? At that point, a person could either decide, oh, I'm never doing that again.
Right.
Or in my case, I ran inside, probably in tears, and looked at the guitar that we had. We had this, this old little Gibson. It was an old LG1 that we had inherited from a relative. I look inside the sound hole, and I see all these other little like kite sticks, these other little pieces glued inside. And I go, I probably need those to make it strong. Okay. So I waited until my dad brought home.
You thought that at that young age. So you had a pretty good...
Obviously, something had to be stronger.
Yeah. But that's pretty... It's interesting because I talked to so many people, and there is definitely... Like, when I said earlier you were sort of groomed for this, this is inherently in you, man. Because I think a regular kid, a normal, not normal, but another 8-year-old may not have thought, that's for, you obviously this was like, there's a reason why, Michael Jordan, his hand-eye coordination, why he was such a great basketball player. Some of his hand-eye coord, but he had that as a young kid, and I'm hearing you had the same thing. Yeah,
I guess so.
I mean, someone that's not familiar with this or didn't have this gut thing would have just seen. I might have said, "I wonder why those pieces are in there." He wouldn't have said, "Oh, like the dime dropped for you right away," which is cool.
So I went in, and I looked at it, and went, "Oh, there's other stuff inside." Okay, well that must be my mistake. So I waited till I got another big scrap of wood. Tried again. That one also broke. Broke in a different way. But same kind of thing. I took the mismatched tuning keys off one, put it on the other. Okay, well, this time the neck broke off. Okay, well, I guess I need a better way to attach them. Okay, and showed it to my dad, and he's a woodworker. He goes, "Oh, you probably should make this part a little longer. That would make it stronger. Because if you attach these next to the ends, then they'll probably want to break like it did." Okay, I'll try that. Third one held together for long enough for me to play a song before a different part broke.
Yeah, but so you're already recognizing, hey, I'm moving in the right direction.
I got to play a song on that third one before it broke. Well, that's something. Okay, that's cool. So you kind of make sense of what's going wrong and what you see, and you can use that to propel yourself forward.
Do you have that sense of stick-to-itiveness, if you want to call it that? Have you always had that with everything you do?
Yeah.
Where'd that come from?
I'm not really sure. When I was younger, it was called stubborn or hard-headed.
Sure.
And, that's a frustrating thing to have to see in a kid and steer. And if it's done well, ironically, it turns into an attribute that as adults we love. It's a great hallmark of the entrepreneurs or people who have really done something well, where you just get beaten back over and over and over. You go, really? You're still getting back up? Yeah. So, I guess in some ways I'm pretty stubborn that way.
That's good, though.
But I have a desire and a curiosity to do what I'm interested in, which is music and guitars, instruments. I like to know about them. I like to experience them. I like to learn more and more about them. Because with any interesting thing, the more you find out about it, the more you learn about it. The more you realize how much there is to know.
Yeah.
And that's another characteristic of great musicians that I've come to appreciate.
Yeah.
You see someone reach this incredible level of skill or musicality, expression, or whatever they're bringing to their instrument. And every time they feel like they're becoming more and more a student of that thing.
Yes, 100%.
So you get farther and farther into this, and your concept of what there is still to learn or discover continues to grow.
Man, Cameron was just saying earlier, I'm still trying to learn to play better guitar. I said, so is everybody I'm interviewing.
Totally.
Everybody is like, absolutely, man. Totally.
Yeah, you look at really great musicians and you think, wow, you're incredible. And they go, yeah, but have you heard?
Right. I still have so much to go. Right.
There was once it was in my kind of pre-Taylor days, but I was a guy named Howard Alden. He come by my old shop. He's a monster jazz musician, just tremendous guitar player. Such really good, tasteful, just incredible tone, brilliant vocabulary, wonderful, wonderful person. He came in, he was playing this archtop that I'd built, and another local jazz player was over as well, so we were kind of hanging out and playing. And the guy sounds just incredible. So I'm talking, in the course of this conversation, I realized, so you're practicing like 6 to 8 hours a day to really get better because you keep finding things to learn. And then in your free time, the way you wind down is you learn other kinds of music. Right. You learn other instruments. Okay. Well, yeah, this makes a lot of sense now,
Well, it's like, I've said this before, school's never out for the pro. And, smart people realize how little they know. It's people that maybe are ignorant or not so smart that think they know everything. Mm-hmm. That's been my observation.
Yeah.
People that are intelligent and hungry, they realize, man, what you just said, I got a lot longer to.
There's a lot of things to know. Yeah, there's a musician here in town named Peter Sprague, who's wonderful, wonderful guitar player. Great engineer, good producer, really good ears. The guy plays, I don't think I've ever heard him repeat himself. He's always got fresh lines coming out of him. And every time I hear him play, I think, now where did you get that? Where is that coming from? He goes, I heard this. And the source could be from anywhere. I mean, it might be, one of the jazz greats. It might be one of the heralded classical players. It might be some busker down on the street corner.
Sure, yeah.
Man, I don't know. But however you're mixing these parts, you're taking stuff from everywhere and making this incredible music with it. This is just incredible to listen to every time.
Very cool. As a builder, what were, maybe if you could pick the top 3 either interesting or weird or combination of both guitars that you've had to build, or the maybe interesting or, different people?
Yeah, I don't know if I could pick the top three. I'll give you one example.
Yeah.
Since I was talking about Peter. Once he was, I'd been working with him for a while, and he approached me and asked me to build him a double neck guitar that was, it's like half electric archtop, half nylon string guitar.
Wait a minute, half electric? How do you have a half of an archtop?
That was the problem. And so it has one neck that's an electric archtop guitar and one neck that's more of a classical guitar, but both necks need to drive like a hexaphonic MIDI output synth controller and then percussion pickups built in so he can loop rhythms with this. And I mean, it's like this laundry list of things, right?
Wow.
And because he's playing at such a high level, it needs to be like real ergonomically correct and all these things. So he's sitting in my shop telling me all this, and I'm looking at him going, I don't know, man. Really? 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 What are you thinking? So I go, okay, well, I'll try. So I built him this instrument, and I can play it and make sure everything's working good, and it sounds kind of cool. And I hand it to him when it's finally done. He goes, this is amazing. A couple weeks later, he invites me to this show. He was playing with a string quartet. He'd written this suite of music for string quartet and jazz quartet. And he's premiering it in this real neat sounding venue. So I go to listen to this, and they start playing. I was completely floored, just utterly blown away. This guy had literally used every possible sound that could have come from this thing.
That must have felt good, though, like to see this.
It was amazing, but so humbling at the same time.
Yeah, sure.
And I was thinking, I will never again question what somebody asks for.
Yeah.
Like, I've got to really give a musician the benefit of the doubt, even when they ask for something that I'm not thinking of, because obviously he had tricks up his sleeve that I wasn't even aware of. It was amazing.
You brought his vision to life, man. That's really
cool.
I
tried. A guitar maker is mostly an interpreter, right? Like the relationship between instruments and musicians is pretty unique because like I see that as a two-way street. Historically, musicians will ask for an instrument. They want something because of music they want to try and make. So they want something that will make those sounds. And a good maker should respond to that, but they should give that musician something that's more than what they asked for. Because every time they do that, it expands what you could have imamed. It expands the type of music that could be made.
So do you do that? Like, so when someone comes to you, I need this, do you take it, okay, here, let's do this, but let's see where I could take it to the next level?
Yeah, exactly. Like a great example. Take Leo Fender. Well, he was listening to a lot of country western music and, kind of the Merle Travis sort of thing.
Sure.
So you look at the Stratocaster and think, okay, well, you were designing it for someone like Alden who's an amazing rhythm guitar player. That's what you had in mind. But I'm sure glad that you did what you did so that someone like Jimi Hendrix could take that same instrument and go a completely different direction.
Yeah.
And make all this incredible music and give rise to different art forms on the guitar. That may not be what you were imagining, but it's what creative musicians can do when you can offer them something musical.
So like your end of the bargain is you're going to create something that's going to push what they've suggested so they in turn can take the music, push it further than they thought.
Exactly.
Wow, that's really cool.
Yeah, that's what really a great musician and a great builder will try to do. So when I look at an instrument, somebody might come to me and say, well, I want a flat top steel string guitar about this size. Maybe I like the sound of these woods. Okay, well, great. Those are some pretty clear parameters, pretty clear guidelines. But that doesn't actually tell me that much, because that tells me, okay, well, if I get a ruler out, it should be this size. That means I know what kind of wood to buy, I guess. But how do you want it to feel? What form do you want it to come in? How do you want it to function? How will you use it? How will you hold it? How will you play on it? Are you going to use picks? Are you going to use fingertips? Are you going to play it with a band? Are you going to play it on a big stage, in a recording studio? What kind of voice do you want? What do you want coming out of this instrument? Because what I want to build into that isn't so much specifications or numbers or measurements. I want to build musical attributes. I want things like volume or sustain or a certain responsiveness, a certain touch sensitivity, things that are a little harder to make concrete. They're maybe a little less tangible than, say, a specific measurement.
Yeah.
But that's what I want to hand back to them. So when they pick up an instrument, they go, oh, well, I told you to make a neck this wide, but instead you built a neck that had comfort.
So you're doing
those are two different terms to use, but that's what I'm looking for. I want to interpret what that instrument is so that a musician can go run with it. I mean, the guitar's not done until somebody's making sound with it.
Man, that's the truth.
So it doesn't really matter if it's just hanging there on the wall. It needs to be in the hands of a musician using it. So I want to give it musically useful attributes so that some player is going to take it and write their songs with it or play with their band or whatever they're doing with it.
So like when you go to a doctor, they don't just say, what's wrong with you? They say, let me get a medical history. Do you exercise? What do you eat like? How long did your parents live? Do you have any pains here? Yeah, so you're doing the same thing except on a musical direction. So you're asking questions of yourself and the players that they don't think of because they're translating into an end thing, but you've got to create. Wow, that's really cool.
Yeah, you're using different languages.
Yeah.
So, like, think of it this way. Okay, at least here in California, there's a huge push towards what we call STEM in education. So the sciences, technology, engineering, mathematics, right? So there's a huge emphasis on that, and that's great. The way I interpret that or the way I translate that is those are the skills that a person would need to learn in order to make something.
Correct.
Right? That's the language that engineers, machinists will work in. Well, the flip side of that is who is going to tell you, or how will you know what it is you should make in the first place? That's where the humanities come from.
Right.
Those are the fields that study our human existence, our experience. Those are the arts and the culture, the history, all those aspects that go, this is what a human experience is like.
Totally.
So we should make this. Okay, well, that's when you translate it over into this other side of numbers and math or engineering or physics or whatever.
Right.
And so you need this balance point. So when I look at a guitar, I'm not ever looking at it in terms of this part needs to be this wide by this tall and have this shape. I look at it and go, well, I need a certain resiliency. I need a certain springiness. I need a certain this or that so that I can have this musical result. I want a guitar with balance. Okay, that means that it needs to respond evenly across the whole register. Okay, well, I'll slowly work that and back that down into numbers and measurements and shapes. But it starts with a more general concept initially.
Dude, you're like the ninja of guitar building here, man. That's like an infinite number of things that you've got to consider and that you do consider. It's like
there's a lot to it.
Yeah, it's wow.
It becomes it's a complex activity because of all the moving parts.
Yes,
and you get that pyramid effect where as you go farther and farther into it, you need to start with all those little bits and pieces.
Yeah.
But only once you know what the end result was supposed to be. So it's kind of this funny backwards and forwards way to look at something.
You got to reverse engineer the whole thing kind of to an extent. Yeah.
Yeah. So
I didn't realize how much was involved.
A lot of times people will ask, okay, well, how do you build a guitar? How do you build a guitar? I see a guitar on stage and I hear songs coming out of it. How do you make that? It's relatively simple and it's unbelievably complex.
Yeah.
It's this funny irony where I have another guitar maker friend who describes it as, well, you get some wood and you cut away everything that isn't a guitar. Well, largely that's true.
Right.
You take wood and you cut away all that was not meant to be there. It's the same as any other sculpture. You get a big block of marble and a chisel and a hammer and you just start taking away everything that wasn't that sculpture. But in order to go through all the steps to get this result, you have to break it into all these little individual activities. You're going to mill a big stack of wood. You're going to plane it thin. You're going to acclimate it. You're going to glue it together. You're going to inlay this little piece. You're going to cut fret slots and all the thousands of different operations that go into it. Every one of these little things needs to be done just so to get the result that you are after.
Yeah. And it helps, I would imagine it helps greatly that you're a pretty high-level player yourself.
I think so. I mean, I don't know what it's like to not play.
Right.
So I've got some other guitar-making friends who build really wonderful instruments, and they can't hardly tune the thing.
Interesting. No, I got to believe it helps. It gives you tremendous insight.
Yeah, I think so. But I've seen some great guitar makers by people who don't play. Well, this is remarkably good.
Yeah.
But why bother? You don't play.
I know. It's less like you're a baker and you're on a diet or something. Like that.
Exactly. Yeah. Don't trust a skinny chef.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, in my case, it helps because my translation between what an instrument should sound like, feel like, function like, it's a very direct translation into actually making that thing. So when you do have to get a ruler out and a pencil and cut the piece of wood this wide versus this wide, well, I have a reason for cutting.
You know why, yeah.
And why one should be and the other should not be.
Yeah, totally. We talked earlier before we started recording. You had an interesting childhood. You were originally from Oceanside. Talk about what your childhood was like.
Well, it was, in a lot of ways, I'd describe it as pretty idyllic because that's what it felt like. I mean, I was one of the lucky kids. I have two parents who love each other and love their family and work hard and never really fell off the rails. You know, they're remarkably functional. We grew up I grew up in Oceanside, but that was primarily around a lot of other musicians and hardworking folks. I got to go to the beach a lot. I really loved surfing and grew up around the ocean from the time I was young. And so that was, in a lot of ways, that was what made me love music in the first place, was that my parents both loved music. And we had a lot of music in our house and a lot of other musician friends, none of whom were professionals. They were just serious recreational players who loved accompanying life with music.
Right.
Like in my dad's case, he's probably the biggest music fan you'll ever meet because that's how he gets through his day. He would get up, go to his job, whatever job he was working at, and he'd play music all day long to accompany whatever he was working on.
Sure.
So, you know, you get 8 or 10 hours or more of music listening every day, and you come back and, well, you actually want to play some of those songs and learn them or sing them again. So I was around a lot of just recreational music playing, and that's a shared experience. That's
very communal.
Like a real communal, joyful sort of thing. My parents had this little house, and a lot of their friends were, you know, tradesmen, plumbers, electrician, commercial fishermen, things like that. And so all these folks would come over and get together. They'd barbecue, you know, be cutting up big fish in the backyard and sharing 2 guitars and a mandolin or whatever, and everybody's singing songs. And as a kid, I thought that's what normal was. because that's what my normal was.
That's what every kid thinks that's what.
That's whatever you experience that's like your reference point,
Yeah. But you experience it, I think, when you grow up with a lot of, it sounds like you grew up with a ton of love and joy and low stress. The energy was put towards positive stuff, which is, I think, excellent, man.
Yeah, I mean,
very fortunate.
I knew it that I didn't really think much about it, I guess, but my parents were not particularly wealthy people financially. I mean, my dad's a carpenter, and early on, my parents had decided that it'd be best if my mom stayed home to, kind of rear their family and kind of impart what she could. And that was a real selfless choice that they made.
Very much.
And so, to me, our life was very rich.
Right.
We got to spend a lot of time outdoors. We were having fun. We were exploring things that we were interested in. We got to go surfing a lot and play music and do all these things. And none of those really had, money attached to them.
Right.
So that wasn't like a big concern or a big draw. So I got to grow up with those other currencies.
Yeah, man, that's a good word for it. Yeah, I like that. That's a really good word for it.
And I am...
It is all that thing, they are currencies.
Yeah.
And there's a measurable value, maybe not measurable financially, but internally, as far as your sense of tranquility and peace. That's measurable, man.
Yeah, I don't know what I would use to measure it, but it doesn't make it less significant.
Less valuable.
Yeah, it's less valuable to me.
Well, you measure it on the most overt way to measure it is like when you come into contact with somebody else who like maybe didn't have that or whatever. Yeah. That's probably the only time you really think about it and whoa, that measure is apparent.
Yeah, it really is. And in the musical world, I mean, musicians are in touch with this expression that's a very human storytelling thing. They're doing their business with the currency of emotion or with the currency of expression or shared story or community. I mean, really, their music is not easily doing business with dollars and cents.
Correct.
I think most art forms are they're that way. Music in particular is a tricky one because most art forms are attached to a specific medium. So you think of them as a decoration of space.
Correct.
You put a painting on a wall, you've got a sculpture, you've got a beautiful building. Architecture is its own art form. Well, those are all like a decoration of space.
It's tangible, like you said.
Yeah, it's very tangible. Music is difficult because it's decorating time as it goes by.
Right.
So it's not decorating a space so much as decorating your experience. It's decorating your time as it transpires. Because of that, it's difficult to convert.
Yes.
And so being around a lot of musicians for a very long time, you see times where they suffer for that, or
yes, for sure.
They grow up in maybe an unsupportive environment, or they find themselves in, by choice or by circumstance, they find themselves in really tough situations where they turn to song to express their frustration, their sorrow, or their joy. I mean, how many times have we heard musicians find redemption through the act of playing music?
And as a listener, you find redemption.
Yeah.
I mean, through music where you're having a shitty day or, something happens and it's cathartic, man.
Absolutely. It's the very best bartender.
Absolutely, man.
You hear a really powerful set of lyrics or a powerful song. You go, oh man, I can empathize with you. Right. I might be filling in my own details between the lines,
but the emotional storyline is like,
man, I know what that is. I know your story. I know, you're reading my mail.
Yeah.
It's like for a while I've thought that a great song, a great poem, a great story, it's not necessarily telling you something new. it's really just revealing an image you've already carried around with you.
100%. Yeah.
So it's
it's
making
an emotional impression that is in you.
Yeah, it's making you aware of something that you already had buried in your subconscious somewhere.
Yeah.
Or you hear this line or hear these set of chord changes and go, oh yeah, that is exactly what that feeling is. That's exactly how this story plays out.
Yeah. And it unlocks it, and it's like you're so symbiotic with that, whatever you're hearing. It's really amazing and unusually, you can't like put it in words.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, really, in the form of a song, you can say things that mere words won't.
Yeah, man. Very cool.
Yeah. It moves you in a different way.
You mentioned you had a brother and a sister. Did either of them get into music?
Yeah, both of them actually.
They're both into music? Yeah,
I've got an older brother and a younger sister, and we all played. I mean, they're recreational players. My brother is currently working with my dad as a carpenter, does a really good job with it.
That's great.
And my younger sister loves playing piano still. And we use songs as bedtime songs for our kids.
That's awesome.
Like I've got a set list every night that I'm expected to play for my own kids.
So whereas some people may read, you actually play songs for you. That is so cool, man.
Yeah, it's like we do stories and songs. That's a part of life. That is a valuable experience. That is
so rich, man.
It's a totally valid reason to own an instrument and play music. It's not because thousands of people are going to be listening to you.
No.
But because maybe one or two or three really significant people are listening. So you tell them those stories through a song, or you play a familiar melody. Man, that matters. That matters a lot. I think there's a lot of value in that.
Oh, my God. And as your kids get older, as a parent who's got older kids, they're going to come to you in ways you never expected and tell you how this stuff influenced them, and it's going to rock your world because you're going to be so happy, because you don't get that as a parent, as you know now. It takes a long time, but when they tell you, you're going to be blown. I'm telling you, man, it's going to be one of the best feelings in your life, and you're going to feel like, wow, I'm really happy I had that. You're going to feel so great for all that, man.
Yeah, like I mean, our kids are young, so they probably wouldn't express it now.
No, they're not aware of it now.
But I'm well aware of the impact it made on me when I was a kid. Yeah. Because I was fortunate that had to have parents that did that.
Okay, so you had the same thing, yeah.
And go, man, as a kid, I drew so much comfort from hearing these songs, these familiar melodies, going, yeah, okay, there's a lot of security in that. There's a lot of confidence that gets built that way.
Yeah, very much.
Like that matters. That has value to me.
Huge, man. I'm really happy to hear that, actually. You seem like you've been really smart about things. Is there any advice that you might go back, and give yourself as a younger person that would have shortcut or helped you out? Or
yeah, if I could, I'd probably go back and say, I mean, I still am kind of like the nerdiest kid you'd ever meet. I mean, I started wearing glasses when I was young, and I was, this rail thin, skinny, freckly kid who's into all this weird. I mean, how many other kids on the block are trying to build guitars?
At 8, probably not.
Not many, So it's a pretty, I'm kind of a workshop troll.
Yeah,
I like hanging out by myself in workshops.
See, but I look at that as how lucky you were to have this bond with your dad.
Oh, yeah.
To me, that's what I now as a kid, I don't know what I would have looked at it like, but that as an adult, I'm looking at, wow, what this was probably made you guys so tight.
Oh, yeah. We still are.
Yeah.
But if I was to go back and talk to my younger self, I'd probably say, just don't worry about it. All those things that you worry about, or the other kids who are making fun of you, just don't worry about it. It'll all work out. Like when I was young, I had a lot of friends who were at least one or more generations older than I was.
Sure.
I actively sought out the company of old men I mean, it's like so nerdy.
Yeah, but
they knew all the things that I wanted to know.
But you were advanced intellectually and curiosity wise.
Maybe, but they, like I said, they knew the things that I was curious to know. It's like my parents pulled out some photos of a birthday party. I think I was maybe 12 at the time, maybe 11, somewhere in there. And there's this picture of this birthday party I had, and there's a whole bunch of middle-aged and older guys playing music.
Right.
And me with a guitar, because that's what I wanted to do.
Yeah, but
they all knew these cool songs, and they had electric guitars and drums and basses and all these things. Go, hey, this would be great. I want to get together with your friends and play music.
Yeah.
That would be a real fun party. So even now, a lot of the folks that I spend time with, they're not young.
Right.
Like there was a guy that I fell in with, a furniture maker, a real renowned furniture maker named Sam Maloof. I got to meet him when I was in my early 20s and spent a lot of time with him. Got to learn a lot of things about life from him.
It's like one of the Maloof brothers?
Yeah, well, this guy, he lived up in kind of the foothill area, sort of east of L.A. Amazing craftsman.
Huh.
He had built rocking chairs for it was crazy. It was like every president since Kennedy.
Oh, wow.
He'd built furniture for the Vatican. He built entire...
That's a pretty impressive customer list, man.
Yeah, the
Vatican, every president. Yeah, that's...
like he's kind of on that, or was on that level, like a playing field of just him.
Yeah.
At one point, I think he was the only living woodworker to have a complete display of furniture on display at the Metropolitan Museum of Modern Art.
Wow.
Only one who was still alive and still actively working who had been given that. He won a MacArthur Fellowship and
a
lot of really neat things. But I loved learning the way that he had lived his life. Built this beautiful lifestyle where everything you could see, every tangible thing, all the way down to the intangible things like his relationships with his friends, all of those had this incredible joy and artful intention about what he would do. It was amazing.
Intention is everything, man. I interviewed, do you know Mike Keneally?
Yeah.
He's here in San Diego, I think, actually.
Yeah, okay.
He made a comment. He said, Craig, intention is everything, because he was talking about, and I said, yeah, man, it really is, because if you're deliberate, the result of what you're going to get out of something where it's intentional is night and day versus, if you randomly stumble across something.
Yeah.
Or you're not really thinking about it.
Well, that's when you start going a direction on purpose, you tend to see more of those same opportunities or those same scenarios come your way.
What do you mean by that?
So if you, on purpose, you set out to become a good musician. So you start practicing and you start actively playing music and going through all the practical things that you could do as a musician. What you'll find is that you come across a lot more opportunities. You find opportunities to play with other like-minded good musicians.
Right. I see what you're
you
saying.
find opportunities to play on records. You find opportunities to tour with bands or to play with these things, or you find opportunities to learn increasingly more rather than just randomly happening into a gig.
Yeah. Because you know what, man?
Like you go through those steps on purpose, and they will return on that investment.
Can I tell you something? That doing this show is the first time in my life I was intentional about taking on a project just because I wanted to do it. Like, not because, this is going to be a good way to make a living, or this is... I mean, I just said, like, literally something told me you need to go start interviewing guitar players. It was like that bizarre. And I said, yeah, man, that feels right. And it just felt right. I was the weirdest thing, because I have not done that in the past, which I should have done more, quite frankly, because it's a lot why shouldn't you do the things you want to do? Yeah. It's like, why? You're building guitars. You're a pretty happy dude. Anyway, and by far, this is the best. This has worked out better than any other project I've done, as far as just, how the organic nature of it, just the feedback, the zone, my personal happiness.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's why I wanted to get clarification on that, because I was.
It makes sense. And sometimes it's funny to realize that you've already been going in a direction and that you should continue.
Yeah.
Like for me, that's largely what happened with guitar building. I mean, I was a kid, started building guitars. Well, they stayed together eventually. And
yeah. Or anybody listening, the guitars stay together now.
Yeah. My big achievement. Well, along the way, I started doing a lot of repairs for people. Because they'd go, oh, you're interested in guitars.
It's a natural side.
Okay, can you fix mine?
Yeah.
Well, sure. I'll say yes and figure it out as I go. And so I ended up doing repairs for all the local music shops. They'd call my parents, and my mom would drive me over, pick the guitars up, bring them back, I'd fix them, and that kind of thing, which led to some other, there's a lot of funny stories. I got in trouble with the IRS when I was still like Little League era.
For not reporting income?
Yeah.
Oh my God!
Yeah, it was a kind of a funny thing as a kind of a pop-up window. I got in trouble with the IRS because one of the shops that I had been doing work for, reported what they'd paid. And,
they gave you like a 1099 or a W-2 or something like that. Yeah, yeah.
And so I got this letter in the mail. I went inside, asked my dad, like, "Hey, Pops, what's this mean?" He starts laughing. He goes, "Well, it means that you made too much money and someone noticed."
Yeah.
So I went out. My mom drove me out to the county recorder's office, and I stand at the window with the clerk there. And he's looking over at me and looking at this and laughing, going, "Kid, you've got a big problem because you're legally not old enough to work in this state, but you have to pay this income tax. Like, wow. You better figure out something because I don't know what to tell you." Oh, great. Yeah, that's not really how I meant for that to go, but, in hindsight, you go, okay, well, officially I started in business then because I had to. But, I was doing restorations, turned into work for a lot of pro players. I'd end up working on or repairing or restoring a guitar for them, and then they'd see something else I was making. They'd order a new guitar from me. So it turned into this thing that I was always doing. But literally, it wasn't until after I was done with kind of finished college, I'm at that age where I'm putting together, the pieces of what an adult life looks like. Putting all these pieces together. I'm thinking, all my friends are going out on tour. They're getting teaching jobs. They're, doing this or that. Well, I don't really know what to do because, all my bills are paid, which is great with this guitar thing. I really love making guitars. Holy smokes, I've got a couple-year waiting list. I can't quit even if I wanted to. I have to keep doing all of this. I guess I've been in business for more than 10 years now. I guess I'm a guitar maker.
Right.
Okay, well, I guess I'll just keep doing this, So in a way, even though I'd been going through all these steps, and in hindsight, I see, I was building a small little business and doing these things. I was just doing what I wanted to do, what I was inclined to do, and I realized in hindsight, this could be almost like something in place of a job. I don't have to go get a job. I'll just keep making guitars. And
that's how it played out.
I'll just do that. I'll get to play some music and make guitars and go surfing and that'd be swell.
That's wonderful, man. And that's how it played out.
So
it worked.
It's kind of funny because I've noticed like a similar course of events for a lot of folks. It's pretty rare for somebody to sit down, with a blank piece of paper and go, okay, I am going to start this project and fill out a business plan and the steps that you're going to go through to get there. Like, that happens.
More often than not, it's along the way. You got to improvise.
More often you realize, my intentions already had me going this direction.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll formalize it. And now that I'm aware of it, I'll just keep going that way. I'll just keep doing this. So,
very cool.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting to see the way people get into things.
Very much so. That's what I love about doing this and hearing all the stories, man. As a player, you're a hell of a player. Who's like your biggest influences? And I'm sure they're deep and wide.
Oh man, I don't know. I really like music, and I've never done a good job liking just one kind of music. So when I was young, of course, I mean, my dad listens to a lot of country, western, bluegrass kind of thing. So there was a lot of those musicians that I loved. Doc Watson was a huge one. I loved his storytelling, his songs, his guitar playing. That was actually my first live show as a kid.
Doc Watson?
I got to go hear him play, which was a real neat, really incredible experience as a kid. I was real young, and after he played this show, and I was, blown away because he was kind of like your granddad telling stories and cracking jokes and all this. And I walked up to him. He was standing in the aisle after the show, and I walk up to him and ask for his autograph. And he starts laughing. He goes, "Oh, kid, I never learned to read or write, so I can't write my name." He goes, "But it kind of rubs me on the head." He goes, maybe some of the guitar playing will rub off on you. That's something you could remember me by.
That's pretty cool.
Okay, cool.
I'll take that instead of an autograph. Yeah,
awesome. Yeah. So I listened to a lot of his music.
That's really cool.
Of course, Ricky Skaggs that guy's an amazing musician. I loved his songs, loved his playing. And then I got really into the Ventures. I thought that was like the coolest electric guitar music ever. So I really got into them. A lot of the other like kind of early 60s surf bands, got really into the rockabilly thing. I mean, Cliff Gallop's playing with Gene Vincent, that kind of flavor. Got super into that. Started moving a little forward. Got really into what you'd call like the classic rock. So a lot of Eric Clapton's playing, Jimmy Page is playing, that kind of thing. Like especially the Eric Clapton with John Mayall and the Blues Breakers.
Yeah, that was great.
When you listen to that first tune, the very first couple of notes of his solo, or he does that unison bend onto a minor third.
Is that All You Lovin'? Is that?
Yeah. It's like that one note. You go, oh my gosh, that just defined the next 10 years of electric guitar playing right there.
The whole song
that was incredible.
The song was great.
Yeah, so I got really into that kind of thing. And I started going kind of both directions. I got very interested in a lot of old jazz. And by old jazz, I mean early, really got into Django Reinhardt's playing.
Okay.
I'd fallen in with, I got into like the Telecaster chicken picking kind of thing.
Okay.
I was really into that, and I was a huge fan of John Jorgensen's playing.
I interviewed John.
Yeah, actually, I heard that when you sent me a link to it. It was great.
Yeah.
And so when I was young, I fell in with him, and he was so kind to me because at the time he was living up in L.A., which isn't all that far away, and he saw that I was into all this surf music. He goes, "Oh man, you got to start listening to Django Reinhardt." So he got me really into the kind of the gypsy
That's funny.
jazz.
So John got you into that.
Yeah,
it's amazing how approachable so many of these guys are. When you see them play a gig, and you can just go talk to them if you're sincere about music, and they're happy to talk to you.
Oh yeah, we all love it. That's why we got into this in the first place. And John's a incredibly gracious musician, incredibly gracious person, and so he saw me into these kind of different styles of music. He goes, "Oh man, you start listening to this. This will light you up." So he got me really into listening to Django Reinhardt and Charlie Christian.
Sure, that makes sense from John.
And at the same time when he was playing sessions that were real open sessions up in LA, he'd call my folks and say, "Okay, it's worth driving up. Drive up, come hang out in the studio today. Let Andy watch how we're."
Oh wow! So you were
record.
like really good buddies with him.
He was a huge influence. He was so unbelievably gracious and so kind, just for no reason other than to be kind.
Well, the reason was he saw your thirst, man, and your sincerity.
Maybe.
And that's
I
nice
appreciate
thing to
it. I'm
respond
indebted
to
him for that.
Yeah.
And so he got me really into this old stuff that I still love, and then I got more interested in like the slightly later Wes Montgomery kind of cool styles. Got a little bit into the fusion thing. Kind of had to try on some of the metal stuff because you have to know how to do something before you could not want to do it even.
Yeah, you got to taste it. Yeah,
you got to have taste it. You try it on, try the tapping thing, do the Van Halen thing. Like, whoa, how's this work? I mean, a lot of those styles, you listen to someone like Tal Farlow do that back in the 50s, and he had that whole two-handed tapping thing down, but putting into a totally different context, Really incredible musicians. And so it just started expanding into different directions. So I got interested in the Hawaiian music and the slack key and some Tahitian stuff and all this old jazz. Of course, I got into the swing, the big band swing thing because of Charlie Christian and Django Reinhardt's playing. Still kind of into the bluegrass thing, got into the blues thing, the rock and roll thing.
God, there's nothing much you didn't leave out. You really checked everything out.
There's a lot more that I haven't learned about yet.
Like?
I haven't been all that many places in the world.
Traveling.
I'm kind of a homebody at heart, so I like going to places and learning about their musical styles.
Okay.
And I got, like, for example, I got really into Cuban music.
Did you go to Cuba?
I haven't been to Cuba. Love to.
It's open now to go, I think, isn't it?
Yeah. And life in a workshop has you tied to a workshop pretty closely, so
totally get it.
That is what it is. But that was really exciting form to come into.
Sure.
Whoa, wow, you have a totally different way to put these harmonies together in this different rhythmic and melodic approach. Wow, this is interesting. And you get into some gospel music and then put all of that guitar stuff onto the backdrop of a relatively traditional classical upbringing.
Right.
Because I'd started on piano as a young kid studying classical piano formally. So I did that for a real long time as well. I'm not a great pianist, but I like it, enjoy it. And so there was this whole mishmash of musical styles, and I have heroes in like every one of those genres. I'm a huge fan of Eric Clapton's electric guitar playing. I'm a huge Django Reinhardt fan. I love Wes Montgomery. He was one of the only jazzers who'd smile while he plays, Yeah,
that's true.
He's like, the guy's just ripping, and every note is so tasteful and so well put. And he's just cruising the whole time. You go, man, that is cool.
Some people you look at when they're playing, man, you feel what they're doing just by their visuals.
Oh, yeah.
And it's cool to see that.
Yeah, I've always loved musicians who were enjoying the music they were making.
Yeah, it definitely.
Some musicians you watch, you go, yeah, it looks like this hurts. This is painful for you to do.
Yeah.
This is pretty interesting, but it doesn't look like you're enjoying this too much. This is difficult and stressful for you.
Yeah, you can feel that.
It sounds that way.
Yeah, totally, man.
You listen to someone like you listen to Vladimir Horowitz play, who's a pianist, and you see the emotion that he would put into a piece. Like, I absolutely adore his renderings of Robert Schumann's music. Just like kind of untouchable. Like, and there's some video footage and recordings of him playing these where you could watch him approach this instrument as if it was another being, like it was a person that he has a relationship with. Yeah, you go, this is just incredible music. It's just unbelievable. So there's a lot of heroes. There's a lot of good music to listen to.
Do you ever hear a jazz pianist called Cyrus Chestnut?
Yeah.
That's a guy who's so happy, like when he's playing, and his music sounds like that. His whole vibe is awesome. Oh man, I got to a couple years ago. My wife and I went and heard McCoy Tyner play through San Diego, and he was playing just as a trio. There was a venue here at the time that had a really great piano, a nice sounding room. I got to go
hear him play. I think he spoke maybe 10 words the entire night. Hardly said a word. He played, I think, 5 pieces. I think it was 4 with an encore. It was one of the most incredible musical experiences of my life. It was like this complete fluidity and completely fluent mastery of this instrument and of his music. It was just like staggering.
Yeah,
it was amazing to listen to, just completely moving. So, yeah, that hero list is big and long.
So let me ask you this: Desert Island discs. Give me your top faves. Just for now, like knee-jerk reaction, because I could ask you in an hour. I know it'll be different.
Knee-jerk reaction. Kind of Blue has to be on there.
Right, I knew you were going to say that one.
Because it's Kind of Blue. The incredible jazz guitar of Wes Montgomery needs to be on there. Well, now that I'm thinking Wes Montgomery, the further adventures of Wes Montgomery and Jimmy Smith probably should be on there. How big is the island? Because there's a... Gabby Pahanui made a record with Blonde Cyril, I think it was early 1970s, that had Ry Cooder as well. That was an incredible record. That one would probably have to be on that desert island if I'm thinking palm trees.
Gabby Pahanui?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you need to know who he is.
Yeah.
If I'm thinking palm trees and coconuts and stuff, that was a good one to have. Of course, there's a couple of classic rock records that need to be on there. Are You Experienced needs to be on there. That John Mayall Blues Breakers needs to be on there.
That Beano record's great, man. Yeah.
That's incredible. I mean, that's some amazing electric guitar. If you're into like the Les Paul through a Marshall thing,
yeah, that's
any of the bands that came after that.
Yeah.
You should listen to that to know where that sound came from.
Yeah.
Doc and Merle Watson live and on stage. The Circle Beyond Broken records, Volume 1 and 2 with the Nitty Gritty Dirt Band.
That was good.
Man, I listened to those as a kid. My parents had those records. I loved the stories.
That's very, like, I think every sort of like progressive person at that age was listening to that, right?
Yeah,
that was like such a class. You know,
I think so. Yeah, I mean, all my kind of similar age friends who got into acoustic music, all our parents had those records.
Yeah, right.
So you listen to those songs, and like off Volume 1, where they included all the banter, like the outtakes and stories in between songs. Man, it's amazing. It was just incredible to hear. And then I remember when my dad came home with that Volume 2 record, the first tune on there has Earl Scruggs and Johnny Cash singing Life is Like a Mountain Railway. And then you have John Prine come on and sing Grandpa Was a Carpenter. You get all these incredible songs just queued up one after another. You go, this is really fun to listen to. There's some amazing playing on there, really great sounds. So there's a lot of those records need to be on that Desert Island list.
That's very cool, man.
Yeah, I have to include Oscar Peterson. I mean, not a guitar player, but I have to include him because I have to. Yeah, I don't know.
No, that's fair enough. You're about your quota, to be honest with you.
Fair enough. Fair enough. I don't want to say too many, because if you go into one genre, like you could have your Desert Island discs that were just records that Wes Montgomery played on.
Correct. Yeah.
And then on a different day, you'd go, well, these are just the Desert Island classic rock records.
Right.
Okay, so you could pick the first 4 Led Zeppelin records and go, well, I don't want to be without those.
Absolutely, yeah.
You know, if the ship is going down and I have to take some favorite songs, my lifeboat's going to sink. You know?
I totally get it, man.
So, yeah, that list gets long.
Hey, I want to ask you about the new Grand Pacific guitar that you developed. because we talked about it earlier, and to me as an outsider, it seems like it's almost revolutionary. I know you're a super modest guy and you're not going to say that, but there's some really cool things about it. I've read through some of the literature, and I just had maybe some basic questions about it that I'd like to ask you. So
it's a guitar, first and foremost.
It's a guitar. Yes. Even I know that. I read a quote from you somewhere. I think it was either I heard a quote on something that you were speaking, or I read something you wrote, and it said, "This guitar isn't confined the way a dreadnought can be." So first, what do you mean by that?
Okay, well, when I think of dreadnought guitars as I've known them, they have a pretty well-defined place in life. They have a thing that they do, right? So musically speaking, they have a certain, typically bass-heavy kind of voice. So it's pretty clear in a bluegrass band, for a country band, for a lot of these places, yeah, that works okay. Well, they're not often great fingerstyle guitars. They're not often great jazz guitars. They have in a lot of ways, I see them as a fairly limited musical place. I mean, it sounds weird to say, because you see something like a great old dreadnought in a lot of places, but it's going to be like your singer-songwriter's guitar, your bluegrass player's guitar, maybe your country player's guitar. That's kind of where they end up. And so when I wanted to build largely a dreadnought-ish size guitar, I have a fairly broad set of genres that I want that guitar to play.
Yeah.
I want it to be a good instrument for a lot of styles of music. Like if I draw an analogy looking at piano players, if you took a really great Steinway piano and you take some of my favorites, take Oscar Peterson, take Vladimir Horowitz, take Dr. John, and you put them on that one instrument, you have three very different sounding musicians. Like, you're going to hear different music coming out of that. And that instrument is so musically useful that it sounds great.
Right.
No matter who sat in front of it.
Yeah.
Totally. It would sound good even if I sat in front of it and hammered out whatever I could. And so I look at a great instrument and think, it should be so musically useful that you can make great sounds that are always musically appropriate. I see a lot of conventional dreadnought guitars as not reaching that same tier. There are some notable examples of incredible versions, but a lot of them, they don't do what I want them to do. And so when I was looking at this, the way it came about, I was actually listening to a lot of the records that I had listened to as a kid. A lot of those bluegrass records, country records, because over the last several years, my wife and I have been doing a lot of carpentry work on our house. Right around the time that we launched our kind of the redesigned 800 series guitars, we were working on this old shack of a house that we'd bought. Yeah, and by shack, I mean, it was like this decrepit little falling down shack of a building. And it was not habitable. So that didn't deter us. So nights and weekends, I was doing a lot of carpentry work, and my dad was over a lot helping us. My brother was helping us a lot. And so I'm listening to all these old records, these old cassette tapes and CDs of what I'd consider work music. So the Circle Be Unbroken records and a lot of Ricky Skaggs' music and Tony Rice, and David Grisman, and of course Doc Watson, all these great musicians going, man, this is incredible. This is really cool stuff. Great songs, fun to listen to. It just kind of keeps you going hour after hour. And in the years that have passed between when I first heard or was first introduced to that music and now, But there have been times I even got to work on some of the actual guitars that made these records.
Oh, really?
You know, so you look at this old piece and go, wow, this person owned it, then this person, this was that actual one. And I'd play it and go, you know, I like the record better. Actually, this guitar is fun to play, and it's really cool, but it sounds great on the record, better than in person. You go, okay, well, that's because you played it into a great mic, and you compressed it, and you EQ'd it, and you kind of sonically fixed all this stuff and made it fit this musical context perfectly. Okay, so that's almost like a mirage. You can't actually have that in person.
Right.
That's a composite sound of all these different influences and different tweaks and factors. So it made me think, well, what if maybe I could build a guitar that already did that already had some of these aspects tweaked in the way that I'd want it to be. So it already has a great balance and great sustain. That's actually what led to the V-Class idea in the first place.
Okay.
Was I was listening to all this music and I had this thought on my head of going, well, how do I fix this aspect independent of this one? Like if I'm going to make this one mechanical thing, this one acoustic guitar, how do I mix it as if I was an engineer in front of a Neve console going, I want to EQ this and I want to tweak this and I want to do that to it? Because all of these parts are integrated. They all affect each other. How in the world do I do that? Maybe it's not possible.
So just so I got clarity on it, your goal was to make the Dreadnought the same as that Steinway piano, where it was more versatile for stuff beyond bluegrass, country, and western stuff like that. You wanted to make it just as so that you didn't need the studio effects to remediate or adjust anything to bring it out the way it was on the record.
Yeah, I want a great, familiar acoustic guitar sound, the way that great records are familiar. We go through this desert island list, and you listen to James Taylor on his Sweet Baby James record.
Right.
I bet you every acoustic guitar player knows the sound of that guitar, that voicing, really well. It's part of our collective DNA at this point. It's part of our vernacular.
Absolutely.
You listen to those sounds and go, yeah, I can identify it. I love the sound of it. So I want this familiar sound.
But I can't do it here in my living room or on stage.
I can't actually do it in person.
Yeah. Right, okay.
I can't make that sound. I don't have an instrument. Nobody has an instrument that does this.
Okay.
Because the instrument itself doesn't even do this. It's like this mirage. And so I thought of this way, kind of taking some ocean inspiration. I thought of a way to break a guitar, like these different design aspects that correlate or translate to specific musical attributes, specific characteristics, volume, sustain, balance, the harmony or in-tuneness of notes, all these different aspects. And this design allows you to manipulate those with better independence of each other.
So when you say this design, you're talking about the bracing.
The V-Class, or what led to the V-Class idea.
What is bracing for people that aren't as intimate as with the constructs of the guitar?
Yes, so on the inside of a guitar, you've got this hollow, curvy figure-8 box. Well, that box itself isn't really strong enough to withstand the pull of strings. So you put structural members in there to make it strong. Now, that's what we call braces, is all those structural members.
That's the things when you were a kid, when you said, oh, they have those things in there.
Yeah, those sticks. Right. Yeah, those sticks. Well, the tricky part is that those sticks are largely what determine the voice of this guitar. You have the shape, you have the woods it's made of, but you can control the way that this thing is moving by where and how you put those sticks, what shape you make them, how much they weigh, exactly how strong they are, where they're strong, where they're not strong. All of those things matter a great deal. And that's what determines the voice of one guitar versus the voice of another guitar, or one musical attribute or characteristic versus another. So conventionally, when you build a guitar, you might use what we describe as an X-braced pattern, where literally you take if you could picture a guitar shape, draw a big X, like you X'd it out. You got two big braces there, and then some other little sticks. Well, we've built a lot of guitars that way. It works pretty good. It's a nice compromise, because to make a long-lasting note, you need a structural holder that's very strong, so that the string stays in motion for a long time.
Right.
And the guitar as a string holder, it's not absorbing the string's motion easily. Yeah. That's what translates to a long sustain. When you think about making something loud, you think of where volume comes from. That comes from making something flexible. Volume, as we perceive it, is a change in air pressure. So that means to make a change in air pressure, you need to displace the air. To displace air, you need something flexible.
Which is kind of counter to sustain and sturdy.
Exactly.
Rigid and sturdy.
Yeah, that's why the classic conundrum for a guitar maker is, I have a long sustain on one side, I have a loud guitar on the other. And depending on the guitar I want to build, I need to choose somewhere in the middle.
Okay.
So if you want, like, to make a hilarious, like an exaggerated version of that, put a Les Paul on one side. A big old giant neck, long through tenon, very, very rigid, very solid, very sturdy thing. We make jokes about it in Spinal Tap. You know, you have this long sustaining thing. That is what it is.
Right.
You play it acoustically, there's not much volume there.
Right.
Okay. The notes last a long time on that wooden string holder. The other end of the spectrum, I mean, mechanics are maybe a little different, but imagine a banjo. You have strings sitting on a flexible drum head.
Right.
It doesn't get much more flexible than that. You have this thing that's amazingly loud, and the note is quite short.
Yeah, no sustain for the most part.
That's what gives a banjo its thing. So they build things like resonators to increase the time delay and the length of note and all this stuff. But you imagine that like spectrum. So if you were going to build, let's say, a classical guitar, you lean a little closer to the Les Paul side. You want a little longer sustain with good projection. If you were going to build a flamenco guitar, where the style has a little more explosive volume and a lot of real quick motion, you lean closer to the volume side of that spectrum, because you don't need the notes to last as long, so you favor one side versus the other.
Yeah, interesting.
So it's this balance point. You got this little tipping point somewhere in there. Oh, that's kind of frustrating, because
as a builder,
if you want to overall increase the musical usefulness of this thing, you need to expand all of its musical characteristics. So you want your cake and eat it too.
Yeah, sure,
you want
totally.
A long sustain, and you want good volume, because that's what gives you dynamic range. You want balance or uniformity throughout the whole register. So every note that you play, you don't want to have to adjust too much for it, so that you could deliberately play it with a certain sound or a certain color. You want all the notes to carry the same distance. You want them to all have good projection. You want them to all be in tune with each other. Like, those are all somewhat independent aspects of a sound that makes it useful to a musician. But in the context of a guitar, they're all tied to each other.
Yeah. This is amazing how many moving parts. This is what I'm talking about earlier, where there's so many considerations involved here.
Yeah, there's a lot of considerations. And so conventionally, when you make a guitar more strong or more rigid, you get the sustain, but you lose the volume, and vice versa.
Right.
So I had this idea where I could control the guitar with a higher degree. So I can more independently manipulate how long the notes should last while getting better dynamic range, while making it move in a real orderly way that gives you a very good balance over the whole register. So that's what we started calling the V-class idea. Because largely it's if you look at the inside parts, it's kind of borrowing from a bunch of different instrument making traditions. It's a little like an archtop guitar, a little like a mandolin, a little like an electric guitar, a little like a flat top guitar. It's got elements from a lot of different instruments put into this one thing where you play, well, it's flavored like an acoustic steel string guitar, but we have a better dynamic range. We've got a long sustain. We have a really unique uniform balance over the whole register. There's a lot of different good things that come out of this.
So, again, to me, this is another example of, like, not to blow smoke, but you're the only guy that could have done this simply because you've made archtops, you've made banjos, you've made dread. You know what I'm saying? You just called in, it has a little of this, a little of that. Well, if you hadn't have done these things, you know, quite literally, it would be impossible. I mean, how could you, how could you put these things together, like, unless you've done them?
Yeah, it's like playing music. When you play a lot of different styles of music,
right,
or you learn harmony as it was, as it has been, as it is, as it probably would be. You learn all the different aspects of the way melodies are put together. You have a bigger pool to draw from.
Yeah, yeah.
So when you become fluent in a lot of different musical styles, you have more options. You got more tools in your box to play with.
Yeah,
and
it'll
allow you to move more creatively between one thing and something else. So when I was looking at this and listening to all this music, I was thinking, how do I make like a studio sounding thing it's a familiar sonority, it's a familiar timbre in the guitar, but I want to control these different variables. So I built this in a almost heretic style where it's got a totally different engine driving the thing. It's just completely different. And lo and behold, I got like halfway through building this first guitar and went, oh man, holy smokes, this is actually going to do what I thought it was going to do.
How did that feel when you realized
it was terrifying. It's absolutely terrifying.
Why is that?
We had just spent a huge amount of effort building the most advanced version of a modern acoustic guitar that we could possibly build. We did a bunch of tooling. We were building and selling these guitars, and musicians loved them. Things were great. And at the same time, I'm sitting here in my shop going, oh my gosh, what have I just done? This is horrible. This is absolutely horrible.
Because you just put out what you thought was the best. Well, the best obviously changes, though. You know what I mean?
Changes.
It's like,
and I wouldn't have discovered this if I hadn't done that.
Yeah, right. And the next thing you do, you wouldn't discover that had you not done this. Because something else will inevitably.
Yeah, and those guitars,
that's great,
I
man.
love those guitars. They're every bit as good as they were the day we introduced them. Yeah. And the guitar is one of those interesting, rare things that gets better the more you use it.
Right, right.
So those guitars are wonderful instruments, and a lot of great music is coming from them. So I had built this guitar and just went, oh no, darn.
Well, man, I give you a lot of credit. I mean, just for number one, from a business standpoint, first of all, even conceiving of how do I do this differently? How do I do it better? It's really easy in every business, no matter what you do, to say, well, this is how we do something. How do I maybe improve it? You kind of disregarded that. You threw that out completely. You didn't say, well, how do I make this thing better? You just said, how do I get a better sound? And you didn't say, how do I take this thing and improve on it? You said, how do I just get a better sound? And you kind of did what you said earlier, which is you kind of reverse engineered it. Yeah,
I'm not interested in maintaining status quo for status quo's sake.
Yeah, for posterity, just because that's how it's done.
That's the way that things have been done. Yeah. Okay, I want to know why they were done that way.
Right.
Why is this the way it is?
Right.
Sometimes traditions are traditions for good reason.
Absolutely.
And sometimes things change.
Yeah, sometimes you don't need to be going around in a horse and buggy.
Yeah, I mean, you go back, let's say 100 years. Okay, well, that was the kind of the time that the steel string flat top guitar was born, really. It was about 100 years ago. It's when people started adopting steel strings on guitars. So it's a relatively young instrument. Think of what did not exist then. Most musical forms that we think of.
Right.
I mean, recorded music was in its infancy. You were at that point. You were on wax discs and early shellac recordings and pressings and things. You had early
amplifiers.
Microphones. They didn't exist.
Right.
You didn't have electronic instruments of really any kind.
Right.
You didn't have so much of what we do now. The electric guitar had never happened. We weren't thinking of an instrument as a system. I mean, that was what the electric guitar brought us. It was the first time that an instrument had been broken into a systemic music maker instead of a single object that made sound.
Right.
An acoustic instrument is what it is, but the electric guitar tackled this conundrum of musical attributes by breaking it into decidedly different pieces, where you had a solid body electric guitar that was like an actuator, where you could make the strings very expressive, but you didn't have to rely on it for volume anymore.
Right.
So then you build an amplifier that reproduces this thing at a controllable volume. That was a really interesting approach.
Totally.
You can make some great sounds from that. There's a lot of cool things that happened from that. So a lot has transpired over the last century as far as music is concerned.
Yeah, for sure.
So when we look at these instruments, think, well, through a modern perspective, modern lens, I know what it's like to listen to something through a mic, having played it, and then been able to manipulate it electronically with compression or EQ or adding reverb or all the different ways that we can manipulate a sound source. Then you think backwards, go, well, what if I impart some of those refinements into the music thing itself, into that instrument itself?
So with the Grand Pacific and this V-Class bracing, when played acoustically and electrically, how does it specifically sound different than prior guitars?
Well, this one will sound in person. It will sound balanced like the sound that would be familiar on a record. So all the notes have a very similar output, similar sound pressure level, very similar volume, a long sustain. It sounds as if it's already been refined through that kind of studio machine.
Yeah. So when you say it sounds like post-record, I'm not going to sound like Tommy Emmanuel. You don't mean sound like the record like that?
No, well, depends on how many hours you've been practicing. I mean, Tommy is Tommy, and he's making some incredible music. He's got a pretty unique touch with the guitar.
But it will sound like a record, like post-production.
Yeah, you listen to that guitar and you think, well, that sound doesn't need fixing. There's no weird woofy sounds. There's no weird honky, weird low-end resonance. There's no dead spots on a fingerboard. There's no choked out notes. It has a very musically useful sound. It's interesting in this case because the sound of the Grand Pacific is a distinctly different voice than what Taylor Guitars has been known for.
Which is?
Well, we're known as the modern acoustic guitar, which is like a high fidelity sound. It's like a high resolution photograph or something.
Yeah.
I mean, imagine sitting in front of a piano, you play a chord. You can hear every single pitch in that chord. Every one of them, you could sing them if you have a decent voice. You could pick them all out and go, oh, that's a C major chord, and you got a bunch of C's, E's, and G's right there. Well, the Grand Pacific is like taking that voicing and playing it on an organ, where the notes aren't so easily identifiable. They blend over into each other.
Wow.
So even though the pitch is accurate, the note is accurately placed frequency-wide, it's a broad note. It's a round note, and they tend to blend together. So you hear more like the relationship between the notes than the notes themselves.
Which is wonderful.
Yeah, it's a different kind of voice in that way.
Talk about, you said that there's no dead spots, and I also assume there's less issues with keeping the guitar in tune. Address those for a minute.
Okay, so if tuning guitars is kind of a funny conversation because there are different aspects of it. And some people will like to be able to tune a guitar, put it on a guitar stand, come back a week later and have it still be in tune. Okay, well, that's mostly talking about the stability of that instrument and the stability of its environment. These guitars do really well for that as far as acoustic guitars go. I mean, it's still made of wood thing, so it's going to move a little. The intonation aspect is a really unique thing to the V-class idea because we think of intonation in the guitar world largely in terms of string compensation. I mean, a lot of people who have set a Telecaster up or a Strat or something, we have that experience of going through making sure the frets are right, the nuts right, the pickup height is right, you get the string height right, and then you adjust the length, the exact length of the string, the exact vibrating length of the string to cheat for the sharpness, the increase in tension when you press the string to the actual fret.
Sure.
Right? You have to compensate for that. So a lot of times people think of intonation only in that way. Well, the reality is intonation in a larger musical context translates to the accuracy of your notes.
Right.
String compensation certainly is part of that, but that's not the only part. And you look at a saxophone player and they're concerned about their embouchure,
right,
to play accurate notes. So you look at a singer and they're concerned about their intonation and exactly how they shape their mouth to make accurately pitched notes.
Yeah.
A violin player, same thing, finger position. There's a lot of aspects to that. Well, with the V-class idea, because there is so much, like such a predictable, orderly motion in the top and back of that guitar and the way that it's moving, all of the notes become less pitch sensitive. There's less non-musical, like inharmonic stuff, less inharmonic sound that's being added into those notes. So it allows the overtone content that string would make, as well as the note itself, to exist more accurately.
Right.
So if I were to describe the body of a guitar like a translator, you play a note. Let's say you play an A440 hertz. You play that note. Most of the time, a guitar is not going to be a great translator. You play a A440 on the string, the body will want to resonate at whatever is closest that it naturally wants to do. So it might give you an A that's 438, 436. Maybe it's a little farther up. Maybe it's 442. It'll give you the closest thing it can. And then even more bizarrely, the closer they get, the more they want. They're like magnets that repel each other. They'll actually cause each other to drift apart.
Wow.
Resonance-wise. And so you play a note and the guitar body is not going to give you what you played. It'll give you the closest thing it can. It's as if it's a translator that has a very limited vocabulary.
Gotcha.
So the way the V-class guitar works, it does not have much preference as to what frequency it responds to. Consequently, it responds quite uniformly to all of them. So if you play an A440, yeah, it's got an A440, plus all the harmonic content that had been overridden by the guitar's own bizarre motions and tendencies. So you get this very rich, blooming kind of sound out of the thing that happened to be spot on the money.
And most important, every successive note will deliver the same thing. So the whole totality of the package is just like sonically much more appealing.
Yeah. It isn't altering its type of motion so easily. It's altering the time that it moves at. So it's more of like you could draw a pretty close analogy to AM radio versus FM.
Yeah.
Okay, well, you're not altering exactly the way this top is moving with every note at a different frequency. You're altering how fast does it move? When does it move? Because it's equally happy to go slow. It's equally happy to go fast, to play higher notes. Doesn't really care. So if you're in an alternate tuning, doesn't matter.
I was going to ask you that.
It's not like a frequency-specific thing. It has to do with the way the guitar actually vibrates and the way it moves.
And this is all through the V class.
Yeah.
That allows this to happen. Okay. Okay. The guitar, the Builder's Edition of the Grand Pacific also comes with something called a compound carved neck profile. If you could talk about how's that different from conventional guitar necks?
Okay. Well, what I call the Builder's Edition idea, it's more of a concept. On a very simple level, as a musician, the two ways that a guitar could be made better is to make it feel better or to make it sound better. That's basically it.
Right.
Those are your two primary areas of interest.
Absolutely. That's why people buy guitars. In fact, I'll often talk to guys and say, the sound was a little, but it felt so good. Or, man, I'm fighting this guitar all the time, but it sounds so
cool.
Yeah, right. And right.
Yeah. So when I look at the what we call the Builder's Edition guitars, I want those to sound great, and I want them to feel as good as they possibly can.
Right.
And to me, that means largely taking out anything uncomfortable. Take away anything that's a sharp corner, for one. Sharp corners aren't comfortable. They're not comfortable on your arms. They're not comfortable on your hands. I mean, in my world, when I touch something sharp, I usually end up bleeding.
Of course, yeah.
I stay away from sharp corners. So all the edges of the body are kind of chamfered off and eased over, so it feels like it kind of hugs into you a little better. Well, the neck is an obvious big aspect of that. Because if it's not comfortable to play, it doesn't really matter what it'll sound like. No one's going to want to play it.
Absolutely.
One of the things I've noticed is that our hand position changes as we play on the guitar.
Yeah, for sure.
Down low on the nut, you wrap your thumb around the neck more. Unless you've got really ideal classical posture, where you have a fairly consistent wrist position. Most of us play by wrapping our thumb farther around the neck, and then we slowly migrate to the thumb being in the middle of the neck, up high on the fingerboard.
Absolutely.
Well, that means that something a little like a V is mostly comfortable down by the nut, but you won't like it high on the fingerboard. You want something very round over there.
Yeah.
So you don't feel like your thumb is balancing on the spine of this thing.
Absolutely, yeah.
So this neck transitions from one shape down by the nut to a far more round shape up high on the fingerboard. And then to maximize the accessibility, I didn't want to use a cutaway on this guitar because I want it to be symmetrical. I changed the shape of the heel so that it has this sort of elliptical, real round, comfortable shape. So when your thumb runs into the heel itself, again, there's no points, there's no corners, there's nothing to get in the way. In fact, I even moved the strap button on most of these.
Did you?
Because I don't want the end of the strap and the button right there in the palm of your hand when you go high on the fingerboard. That defeats a lot of the point of trying to get up there.
Yeah.
You got too much in your way, you lose the dexterity of it.
Again, that's another thing, because as a player, that's like a bonus sort of that, like, maybe somebody wouldn't have thought of because they're not doing this.
Yeah, I guess so. I look at these and go, well, they're for playing. They're for playing songs. That's how they should be evaluated. That's how you should use it. It's how you should try it out. Pick the thing up and play some songs on it.
Does the V-class bracing impact, the expression system, when you're playing it through an amp? Yeah,
it does. The expression system pickup works pretty well. It's about the best pickup that I've tried in a flat top guitar. By no means would I call it perfect. Conceptually, it can't be perfect. The sound of a flat top, any acoustic guitar, the sound of that guitar does not live on or in the guitar. So there's not anything that we can attach to it or put inside it that's a completely perfect representation of what that thing does.
I think that's a very fair statement, man. Yeah.
Right? So microphones do a great job.
Right.
Because they are capturing the airspace around the guitar.
Right.
That's a lot closer to what we experience. That said, when I bring that guitar on stage, what I'm looking for it's not necessarily a perfect representation of that guitar. I'm looking for a musically useful sound. I want something that fits in the context of a band or even as a solo player or what have you. You just want something that works good. So the expression system does a pretty good job of that.
Great.
So that works pretty well, and it certainly is capable of reflecting the expanded dynamic range, the accuracy of the tuning or of the intonation, the balance, the sustain. A lot of those aspects we get to hear and use. That's pretty interesting.
Fantastic. And I love these. I tend to like ebony fretboards, and these come standard with ebony fretboards.
Yeah, all of our guitars do, actually.
Yeah, I love them.
All the way from the Baby Taylor to the Presentation Series, certainly the Builder's Edition Grand Pacific guitars, and all of our instruments. It makes more sense in a practical way from a factory perspective or an industrialist. If you buy the material, you're going to either just buy the highest grades and throw away everything else, or you're going to figure out a way to use everything else. So there's a bit of a fallacy amongst some builders when they say, well, we only use ebony. We're not contributing much to the sawing of that wood because we only use the highest grades. Well, you still had to cut all of it. You threw away the 90% that wasn't technically flawless. You had to cut it all still.
Right.
So in our case, we made a choice. Bob made a choice years ago, long before we were ever involved with the sawmill in Creelicam in the country of Cameroon that we're operating. Years ago, 25, 30, maybe more years ago, he made a choice to go, no, I like ebony fingerboards, and I would rather use even an ebony fingerboard that had color or some flaw that I had to work around or fix or repair, maybe a tiny bug hole or something. I'd rather use that and get to use ebony on all of these guitars.
Absolutely.
Than only buy just the top % grade for these most expensive ones and rosewood for everything else or cheaper materials for the low-end guitars. Everything deserves to work well, and we want to make it all work well. There's actually a practical choice in doing that. Going, okay, a Baby Taylor guitar. That's the least expensive instrument we make. It's got a solid ebony fingerboard on it.
And man, you know,
works wonderful.
It works with diamonds. You know, nobody's buying a flawless diamond. I mean, right? Like 99.99% of the people don't buy flawless diamonds. It has the same thing, little tiny divots or a shade off color. So, I mean, to even have that standard of it almost doesn't even make sense.
Yeah, and a lot of times what we would look at is, let's say you call it flawed wood. Well, what is that?
Right. You show the average guitar player. Are they actually know? I mean, seriously, the actual person, do they actually know what? I mean, can you tell what? I've got an ebony neck Strat at home. I love it, but I couldn't tell how flawed or it feels great. That's all I know.
It feels great. It functions great.
Right.
Well, a lot of times the quote flaw was the color.
Right.
Well, man, that's a very subjective thing to ask. Do you like the wood that has a little more color in it, or do you want it jet black like it was a piece of composite or plastic or something?
Right.
I don't know. I kind of like it to look like a piece of wood, personally.
Right. Yeah, me too. Yeah.
If I use the same piece of wood for the back or sides of a guitar, I want it to be the most colorful one because I like looking at it in that case.
Yeah.
So it's, in a lot of ways, it's a subjective kind of choice. Some people love it, some people don't, and that's okay. But we make choices like that.
Yeah, and it feels great. I've played them this morning. couple of things you mentioned to me the very first time we spoke over the phone. You said to me, you said, we make everything we sell. What do you mean by that?
It means that we are a guitar manufacturer that actually makes the instruments we're designing and building and selling. A lot of times in industry, you end up with an instrument that's a commodity. It's a SKU. It's a product. You could insert almost any kind of accounting word for it. It's the merchandise that you ply your trade with. It's
so like you're buying something and then you're just putting a markup on it. It's a finished product already. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, that's not what we do. We are guitar makers. We are musicians. We got into this because we love the instrument. We love music. We love musicians. We like serving them. So when we're going to build and sell a guitar, that means that we want to make that instrument and we feel it has value to offer to musicians. So we're going to figure out where to get materials, how to make it, how to build tools to make it consistently, how to distribute it, how to put it in the hands of musicians so they can go make their artwork. So when you look around our factory, we make stuff. We're not importing anything. We're not importing half-done guitar parts or... Sure. Like, we get chunks of wood and we turn them into a guitar. That's what we do. Well,
it's funny. I met a guy in the coffee room earlier, young guy, Carlos, and I was asking him, what does he do? And he said, I'm a machinist, and he just made some part. And he goes, man, it was really difficult, but I took a couple of tries, we finally got it. Yeah. He was making a part. He was a machine. He's making a part that makes another part.
Totally.
I mean, that was
we build all of our own tooling in house.
Right. That's right. That was pretty cool.
Literally, consider all those different aspects that go into building a guitar. Every single part of every single guitar, every single model needs to be designed with intention. You design the process for how the parts get made and assembled. You design the tools to hold them, to cut them, to locate them, to glue them, to finish them. Every single part for every instrument we make.
That is so awesome, man.
And we build all of it. So when like the Grand Pacific guitar, at this point, we've been building and working towards that guitar for the last 5 years.
Wow, that's when you first came up with the design for this 5 years ago. Wow. Yeah. See, that is really interesting.
It has that much time behind it to go, we want to make this instrument. This is incredible. We love playing it. You can hold the thing up. I'll build them by hand with my old hand tools and whatnot, play it and go, yeah, this is a guitar musicians would want to make some music with. It feels good. Everything is right. Let's start.
How many iterations did you have to build before, like, the final? What's the final?
I'm not sure. I didn't count them. The first V-class guitar was built around a conventional dreadnought shape. Second one was built around that. The third one was this shape. I realized by then, like, well, this is really something. I need a shape that will alter the way this moves a little bit. So I put some refinements into that. Built that shape.
How is that shape different than a convention? How is the Grand Pacific different from the conventional dreadnought? Besides the rounded shoulders.
I guess you could call it like a round shoulder dreadnought's the closest comparison that I have, and it's not really that even. The waist is a little tighter. The lower bout is a little rounder still. It doesn't come to a flat the way like a J45 or what. I mean, we call it a round shoulder dreadnought. Gibson would have called it a jumbo. That's where the J and J45 comes from, or an SJ or AJ or any of those. This one's a little rounder overall, and the waist is a tiny bit tighter, so it comes in towards the sound hole just a little more than most conventional dreadnoughts to make it work a certain way. I mean, the shape of the guitar is defining the boundary edge of the vibrating top and back, so that does largely determine the voicing of how those are going to move.
I'm excited just listening to this. As you got with each sort of like iteration or like discovery, were you like pumped up?
Oh yeah,
you had to be, because it's
like, thrilling. Like the very
stuff.
best guitar any guitar maker will make is the next one.
Yeah.
Right. So you build this guitar and it's like the greatest thing ever. You play it, you get it all strung up, and like, man, this is a real thrill. Now tomorrow we're really going to do something. Tomorrow's guitar is going to be really something. So with this, there was that, third iteration, fourth iteration. Was like, man, this is a great guitar.
You found your voice in that model on that iteration.
This is really something.
Yeah.
And then there were dozens more that I built, and I'd play them. I'd give them to musician friends and go, okay, now this one, I season just a little more like this. What do you think? Oh, this one's a little more orchestral sounding. This one's a little more like this, to see where exactly it would best fit most musicians.
Very cool, man. The other thing you said to me about V-class bracing technology, the first time we spoke, you said V-class bracing technology is part 1 of chapter 2 of Taylor Guitars, and the Grand Pacific is part 2 of chapter 2 of Taylor Guitars. What do you mean by that as well?
Well, initially when I was thinking of the V-class idea, I was thinking of this what we call now the Grand Pacific guitar. At the time, it was just guitar
next
4.3, whatever.
Right.
It was next. It was tomorrow's guitar.
Right.
And so I realized, man, this is actually a bigger thought than just this one particular guitar I want to make, because I got to break this voicing thing into more independently controllable aspects. Ooh, we could do the sound that we're already known for, that real high fidelity, modern, articulate, precise guitar voice. We could do that better than we've done.
Right.
Okay, well, let's do that first. So that was the guitars that we introduced, I guess, early in 2018. It was our 814 and the 914 and the K14 Builders Edition. Like, they're the most Taylor-ish Taylor guitars we've ever built. The most modern, the most high fidelity. All of these things that we know and love. Go, this is great. So that felt like the end of chapter 1.
Yeah,
the beginning of chapter 2. We go, oh, this last iteration, it wasn't the end of the book. It was just the end of this chapter. Wow, there's so much more that we have to discover. There's all this new range that we get to explore and develop and learn about. So that was, page 1. And then you turn it over and go, well, if we get to choose how we want to voice guitars and deliberately build in different kinds of sonorities, wow, what do we do next? We could build something that's very different than what we've done in the past. We should.
Awesome.
So that's what the Grand Pacific feels like, where you have, these are the very high fidelity, modern sounding guitars. Here is a very familiar sounding guitar that's been refined to a level that we wouldn't have had until recently.
So this is literally like a technological jump in the development in the development and sound of an acoustic guitar.
For us, it is.
Yeah.
Yeah,
well, I think it's probably safe to say it is, period. I mean, I know you're being humble, but it is, period.
It gives us a lot of choices that we haven't had in the past.
Anything else make the Grand Pacific near and dear to your heart?
Oh, yeah. It's a sound that I grew up listening to that I never actually got. It's an instrument that I...
Sweet Baby James.
Yeah, you listened like you pick out one of those great records, like the Circle Be Unbroken record.
Right.
The second tune on that second volume is this John Prine tune. I grew up listening and loving that song. But there's this incredible guitar solo on it. It's not really complicated playing, but it's musically perfect. You listen to that sound and go, well, that's incredible. I wish I had something that sounded like that. Right. Can't actually make that sound.
Right.
So these guitars are really fun to listen to and play and go, man, there's all kinds of great new expression that people will pull things that we haven't even imagined out of it.
Awesome.
Yeah, so I'm pretty thrilled with these.
Can I ask you to maybe play the guitar in a few different genres so we can all check it out? That would be great.
So this one, let's see,
what do you play at? Talk about what guitar are you playing right now?
This one is a 717. This one's a natural top guitar. This particular one has a pickup in it. One of the things that I've been having fun with is playing different strings on them, because these guitars, they tend to be a little more reflective of what you bring to it. So the type of pick you use, if you're using one, the exact strings you put on it, all those things matter even more than they used to, because the design is capable of reflecting like a more complex harmonic content.
Which means you get to dictate how you sound with more specificity and control.
Yeah.
Which is
so great. Like in this case, on this guitar, we just put, this one's a D'Addario nickel bronze set, which has a pretty distinct flavor to it. It's really cool. Fun flavor.
Wow, man! You know what? When I got like goosebumps when I listen to someone that can just communicate those emotions like that. It's really thank you, man. How about man? Just go through a few different genres. I mean, play some blues, country, whatever you feel like doing, man. I'd love to hear this. Man, can I get a request?
Sure.
It's too common, but can you play Little Martha? Do you know that one? Yeah, I love that song.
Yeah. Tuning is kind of like airplane maintenance. It's a good idea. It's really a good idea.
Man, that thing sounds, just you tuning it sounds good, man. three guys in here.
Sorry about the first one. I was
I'd be teary-eyed, man.
I know where I know where that lick is somewhere.
Man, it's off the
It's been a while since I played that.
Beautiful, man. Are you kidding me? That was freaking gorgeous.
Yeah, so these become real interesting to play because they have just a very different voice that you could do all sorts of stuff with.
Man, we've been wasting time doing this interview. I should have just had you play for me, because that is getting me.
There's all kinds of fun stuff, man. There's a lot of good guitar music.
Feeling all right, right?
Oh, yeah.
I interviewed Dave Mason, funny enough.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was pretty interesting. times you listen to that Cream record?
A lot. I mean, there's a lot of good notes.
There's
in that,
a lot of that. You know, that was tremendous, man. Beautiful, man. What was that?
It was
like a Celtic
tune.
Something.
It was a tune, a guy named Mark O'Connor, who's an amazing fiddle player. He wrote that with, I think it was he put it on a live record he put out with Frank Vignola's amazing guitar player, and John Burr was on bass, I believe.
That was beautiful.
Yes. I forget the title of it.
It sounded like a
Fiddler and Going
Celtic
Home, I think.
Or something.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
that was pretty, man.
Incredible musician. Incredible guy. Yeah, I don't know. With an instrument like guitar, it's interesting because you can go so many different ways, so many different flavors, so many different sounds, and it's such a direct expression of what a person would do. I mean, a lot of times I play this kind of stuff. It's not complicated, not hard, but it's fun.
I'm impressed that you got these giant machine welding hands, and you're like so gentle and like dainty and perfect on that neck, man.
I wish.
That is great.
I've never been able to have fingernails on my right hand, so I couldn't get into the classical guitar music as much as I would have liked to.
Yeah.
Because building guitars, I run into tools. I run into belt sanders and things like that.
Do you know Pete Anderson?
Not personally, but I know his playing, yeah.
He's got his hands. I interviewed him a few weeks ago. He's like a velociraptor. Like he can rip the lid, just like rip a can of soda in half. His hands are massive, and his nail, and he gets like the acrylic nails that he has, but he like, it's like a pick. I've never seen anything like it. He's magical with his right hand. I don't know how this many years, but must tell everybody that as much as you're just saying you wish you had your right hand, you've been playing without a pick this whole time, or most of the time without a pick.
Sometimes
yeah,
I'll hide
I'm
it in
like
there.
sitting there thinking, what are you talking about, man?
I don't have the fingernails. It's a whole different thing. Like I can't do the Roschiato really well.
Yeah, but you're faking it great. Honestly,
Thanks.
man.
I appreciate it. I'll take what I can get.
Yeah, man, absolutely.
Yeah, there are times when I start playing through the bedtime song set list, and even my kids will go, "Yeah, you must be tired. You're not playing so well tonight."
Oh,
you know?
Oh my God,
Harsh critics, man.
Oh.
Like, no, you blew it. You sang the lyrics wrong. You know.
Oh my God.
Yeah, you're right.
Well, you sound great, man.
Thank
That
you.
guitar sounds great, and thank you, man. Let's head into the last part of the. People call this the therapy part of the interview.
Okay,
Everybody
fair enough.
says people say everyone loves therapy. I should rename the show. Bless you, Andy. First of all, thank you, man. That was really
it's my pleasure.
Really beautiful, man. Honestly, that was like I feel like you gave me a gift there. So thanks.
Well, thanks.
Tough question for musicians, always. I think for a lot of people, but what do you like most about yourself?
I like that I'm curious still. You know, I think that's something that a lot of kids are born with, and slowly they lose that. They, either become numb to it or gets trained out of them, and people stop being curious, and they pay attention to only what's in front of you, what's directly in front of them.
Sure.
I mean, there was a book I read, or I'm kind of finishing up now. It's a really fantastic read. It's by a guy named Daniel Kahneman. It's called Thinking Fast and Slow. He won a Nobel Prize in economics and the psychology of economics, and it's a book about decision-making process. It's a fascinating read, but he talks about a concept being what you see is all there is.
Interesting.
So what you see in front of you is all that you make your decisions about.
Yeah.
And that's rarely the entire story. It's almost never the entire story. And it always benefits you and everybody around you to look a little more deeply at what's really there and consider what's in front of you as part of it. But it forces a person or requires a person to be curious.
I think that is especially important when you're dealing with people because, I've learned when I was younger, I would be a harsh judge, and I wouldn't like how someone acted. And I never think like that now because I don't know what kind of day they're having. I don't know what's behind.
Yeah.
And also, it's not about me.
Yeah.
Whatever they're doing, I know now has nothing. It's everything to do with what's going on with them. And for the most part, zero to do with what's going on with me. So I've really tried to be really diligent with that to, even with like my kids, to talk to them about, maybe you need to be a little more forgiving because you don't know what's going on. Not that they're right; they should have behaved differently. But sometimes you just don't know.
Yeah. So I've always been a fairly curious person, and that there have been times that's gotten me into trouble, but mostly it becomes an asset.
Yeah, I would say so, man.
Because it's what keeps you going forward.
Well, man, it's got all these guitars. Are as a net result of that, man.
Yeah.
Flip side, anything that you'd want to change about yourself?
Oh, there's a lot. There's a lot.
I'm
working on it.
Yeah, we're all works in progress, man.
One thing that I'd love to change, I'd love to have a really great singing voice. I'll tell you a funny story. When I was younger, I was taking piano lessons for a long time. I had an amazing piano teacher. She's great musician, brilliant, classically trained vocalist. So I thought, okay, well, I'm playing in these bands. I want to at least become a little better backup singer. So I started taking some vocal lessons from her. And after a year, I'd known her for a long time, so she could be pretty honest. And she had this, beautiful accent. And she goes, "Andrew, darling, I don't know how to say this. You're doing everything right. Your posture is right. Your breathing is right. Your voice just doesn't sound good. Just stop singing and play your guitar."
Oh my God.
And then I'm like, oh, wow, that hurt,
Yeah.
And then she follows it up and goes, but if you must sing, don't tell anyone that I taught you.
Oh, my.
Wow. Ow. Oh,
ouch.
That hurt.
Ouch. But your speaking voice is really good. I'm sure people have said that to you. You have a good, a good speaking voice.
Oh, I don't know. I've never really heard that, but
yeah.
I mean, I'd love to sound like Barry White or Marvin Gaye.
Barry White.
I mean, I've been fortunate as a musician to play alongside some incredible vocalists.
Yeah.
Like some people who just have gloriously beautiful sounding instrument voices.
Yeah. That is a gift, a blessing.
It's amazing, and at the same time, it's a total curse. You go, well, oh man, I'll make do with what I got.
Yeah,
but I don't got that.
Wow.
I don't have that. That's just thrilling to get to listen to.
Sure, totally get that.
So if I could, I'd go, yeah, a little more vocal control would be nice.
In the big picture of life, though, if that's the number one thing you'd want to change, man, that's okay.
Oh, there's other things. There's other things I'm always learning.
Yeah.
And, you don't learn what it is you need to change or want to change until you start examining what's really there.
Well, until something happens that makes you examine.
Yeah,
I need to look at
this. It's kind of like
that
that famous quote. A life unexamined is not a life that's worth living.
Right.
I think I butchered it. It's a paraphrase, we'll say.
Yeah. No, I hear you, man. Happiest moment or time in your life?
That's a pretty long list, actually.
That's great.
I'm really fortunate.
That is really wonderful.
Like I said earlier, I'm one of the lucky people that got to enjoy the blessing of a really wonderful childhood with two caring, loving parents. I was supposed to be a bachelor guitar maker my whole life, and I was really content with that plan. And then I happened to meet my wife, and I changed that plan real quick.
How long have you been together?
We've been married for about 14 years now.
That's wonderful, man.
Yeah.
So you've been together, 15, 16 probably?
We got married after a couple of months.
Oh, so that's pretty quick. Good for you, man.
Congratulations. It was kind of like hey, I changed my plan.
Good for you, man.
You called me back? Okay, well, yeah, hey.
Congratulations.
That's
a long time.
Yeah, and that's an incredible, wonderful asset in my life.
Oh, sure, man.
We have 3 healthy kids, and they're wonderful in their own unique and challenging ways.
Do you homeschool your kids?
Yeah, actually.
Oh, you do? Okay. So
yeah, we're kind of... a sort of a hybrid. I mean, that's not a great fit for every kid, and every scenario is different. In our case, our oldest, who's our first son, he's a real unique kid, as every child is. And
sure.
He has some real interesting. He's very interested in what he gets into. Kind of that
apple
same
doesn't fall far from the tree.
Like maybe I wouldn't use the word OCD because that has bad connotations. But when you get interested in something, you are all the way there. You are all in. Okay, well, let's try and make an environment where you can enjoy that.
Right.
Same with our daughter, who's a couple years younger. She's gets very interested in what she's into. So we have a young son now who's only about a year. So so far, every one of the 3 has been different.
Right, yeah. He'll be different, trust me.
Heck if I know. The one thing that my dad told me before we had kids was, it's going to be way harder than you think it is and way better than you think it is.
Yes.
Yep. That's pretty true. That and the coffee that we love, that used to be more like a drug, is now more like a vitamin.
You mentioned your dad. What's the most important thing he taught you?
Oh, I've learned a lot of great stuff.
Right. I know
he's a wonderful person. He's one of the real rare treasures that you'd meet in life. He taught me to figure out what you wanted to do and go and do it, and not resent the work that was required to do that. Don't be afraid of the work or the effort that you're going to have to put in to do that. Learn to enjoy the work that's in front of you, because that contentment is the most rare, difficult thing to acquire in life, is to be content with what's in front of you. That's tough.
I like how that whole thing, the way you frame that, or the way your dad framed it, is really positive, and I really like that.
Yeah.
So he taught you work ethic, and he taught you, but it's a work ethic for the joy of fulfilling your passion, not,
Yeah, it's like, I mean, on one hand, you say, well, I want people to go do what they're passionate about. You know, if it makes you come alive, man, go and do it, because we need people who have come alive. But at the same time, that requires effort, and it's not going to be easy, and it needs enough desire and enough strength and enough of the mundane chop wood, carry water part to just keep moving through it. And you learn to enjoy that process. Like, I describe it now as it's the work of art.
Yeah.
A lot of times we think of a work of art as the actual done piece. That's not it at all. It's the work that goes into that art that really matters. So when you can learn to enjoy that process, the sawing wood, the gluing, the sanding, the endless hours of sanding and the cleaning of sawdust and sweeping up the shop when you're done and all those things, you learn to enjoy that part. That's a rare treasure.
Man, that quote you just said, we need people who have come alive. One of the best quotes I've heard. Very cool. Most important thing your mom taught you?
They were pretty well aligned on a lot of those things. So a lot of those lessons, I'm not sure I could attribute it to either of my folks.
3 more questions, man. Toughest decision you've had to make, or most difficult thing you've had to do?
Well, I've had some big challenges. Interesting in hindsight, one of the most difficult decisions when Bob Taylor had approached me about working together. That was a really hard choice, actually.
I could see that.
Because I love working in a workshop. And I was one of the lucky ones who got to do that. Now, that worked. Like, my bills were paid. I was totally content doing that work. I was thrilled with the musicians that I got to work with and the instruments I get to make for them. It's a hugely life-filling, passionate pursuit. And literally, Bob called out of the blue. He just went, "Hey, come down to the shop. I want to talk to you alone." I thought, oh, you're going to push me into the wood chipper or something. I don't know what I did. I don't know what I did to bug you, but okay, okay. I'll drive down there. I got to stop by a shop nearby and get some wood anyway. And so we sat down, and he lays out this kind of dream. It goes, look, I want Taylor Guitars to be a guitar manufacturer driven by a guitar maker for another generation. Because we're unique in our guitar industry or world. We're unique that we are guitar makers.
So it's art over commerce.
Yeah, we got into this in the first place, like any musician would, because we love music and we love the guitar and we love making things. That's why we did this. It certainly wasn't to make money doing it. I mean, there's a lot of other things you could do that you could make a lot more money and a lot easier than making stuff and building guitars, no less. And so that was when he first approached me about that. My initial thought was, well, I didn't see this coming. This was a lot different. And at the time, I had a pretty long waiting list and I had commitments. And so finally, he, after talking about it, we talked for, some weeks or whatever. He goes, look, no, he's like, I'm totally open-handed. Take a week to decide, take a year, take whatever you need. It's like, it's either you or nobody else. So I think it would be good if we could. And we talked more about it. And then he finally, at one point, he goes, look, let me put it this way. He goes, we're all given certain gifts in life. We're all given certain abilities, desires, bits of knowledge, whatever it might be, whatever your thing is. It's like, in your case, speaking to me, you have this ability with instruments. Because you could take that and make a dozen musicians really happy every year. It'd make their audiences happy because they get to listen to these things. You'd make a dozen musicians real, real happy. Or you could take what you've been entrusted with and make thousands of musicians really happy every year, because there's thousands of people who will get to play these and enjoy these designs. There's 1,000 employees whose livelihoods depend on producing these designs. There are thousands of people around the world whose livelihoods depend on supplying materials for these instruments, not to mention all of the dealers and guitar aficionados and
their families. And
everybody gets, a whole bunch of people get to benefit from doing this. Oh, well, if you put it that way, it makes a lot of sense. Okay, let's do this.
And that was the trigger.
Yeah. So in that way, I saw, well, if we can combine the things that I'm pretty good at doing with the things that Bob and Kurt can do, that's something really special and unique that hasn't much existed in the guitar world.
That's really cool, man. And I got to tell you, no bullshit. I'm not a guy that, I don't need to lie. I'm say what's on my mind. Your passion for what you do, it's beyond passion. It's like your joy and your work ethic commitment to doing this at such a way as to make your players happy is really awesome.
Well, honestly, thank you,
man. And it's like really, really cool. And I'm glad that, I got to be connected with you and just to see that, because that is really inspiring to me for sure. And
thank you. I appreciate that.
People. You're welcome. Thank you. 2 more questions. You started off selling guitars out of your garage or blowing up guitars.
Yeah.
And now you're, running one of the largest, if not the largest, acoustic guitar company and one of the most prestigious in the world. In reflecting over that journey, what are some knee-jerk reaction thoughts that come to mind? And you got a long way to go, man.
Got a ways to go. One thought would be, don't screw up.
No, I meant you got a lot more stuff you're going to be doing. I meant that in a good way. You got a lot of other cool stuff.
It's kind of, that's an interesting question, because in so many ways, I mean, I guess if I looked at it from a third person perspective, a lot has changed because I went from the smallest shop in the world to the largest.
Yeah.
But nothing has changed.
That's what I like so much.
Absolutely. This is exactly what I've always done.
Right.
I want to make the very best instrument that I'm capable of making so that I can offer that to a musician and let them go make their artwork. We're here to serve the musician. We want to build these incredible instruments that inspire musicians to tell their story, to make their songs, to wow their audiences or convey what's ailing them. Like, it's our contribution to the musical world. And it's both a thrilling and humbling position to be in, to say, we'll do our utmost to try and give you the very best that we can so that you can go make your magic.
I love what you said. Everything has changed and nothing has changed. That was awesome, man. And last question, biggest change in your personality over the last 5 years, and how much of this has been intentional and how much is just a part of aging?
I'm not sure I'm the best person to answer that.
Get your wife on the phone right now.
Yes. It's fun to have young kids and watch them rediscover the world.
Yeah.
Or they're discovering it for the first time. I get to rediscover it and rediscover all those things that you slowly start to pass by. I mean, I like watching flowers and trees and plants grow as much as anybody, probably more than most.
Sure.
But to watch them discover it for the first time.
Yeah, that is really
You
cool.
look around you and realize everywhere you look, every person, everything outside, it is nothing short of miraculous.
Totally.
It is absolutely miraculous that this can exist, that you can plant a little seed in the ground and it turns into a tree that you get to pull oranges off.
Sure, man.
Any one of these things, it's nothing short of miraculous.
Totally.
So that's been really enjoyable to rediscover and find it rekindled every day in a fresh new way.
And here's the good news again, as a dad who's a parent of older kids, that will continue as they get into relationships and start driving and go to school and get jobs.
Driving's going to be terrifying.
That is terrifying. Man. I got to tell you, it really is. But you'll have one that's got it under control and one that's totally like scary, and then you have probably one in the middle.
Yeah, but, probably fair.
You're going to get to keep doing all that, which is really cool, man. Man, I can't thank you enough for everything. You've been incredibly generous with your time. You sound great. I really like learning about you and about the new Grand Pacific. I want to just tell people where they could find more info about the new Grand Pacific. Go to taylorguitars.com, and basically on the homepage there, just look for the Grand Pacific. And you guys did a great job. There's tons of information on there. It's very robust. There's great videos of you, playing in action, your thoughts. And also check out Taylor on Facebook and Instagram under Taylor Guitars. Any last words?
Thanks for coming to visit us.
No, man.
It's always fun to talk to somebody who has similar interests.
Thank you, man.
It's a real treat.
This is my pleasure. Thank you very much. Everybody, thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this, please share it with a friend on your social media channels. We appreciate your support with that. Thanks very much to Andy Powers and all the good folks at Taylor. Thanks, Andy, for spending time with us. Don't forget to check out the new Grand Pacific on the homepage of taylorguitars.com. Make sure you go to everyonelovesguitar.com. Sign up to get on our newsletter list so you and I can connect. And most important, remember that happiness is a choice, so choose wisely. Be nice, go play your guitar, and have fun. Till next time, peace and love, everybody. I'm out. We hope you enjoyed this show. If you did, subscribe to the Everyone Loves Guitar podcast, and you can do this online at everyonelovesguitar.com or on iTunes. And if you like the show, please leave us a 5-star positive review. The more 5-star reviews we get, the higher our show ranks, and higher rankings mean we get to continue speaking with cool, interesting guests on our show. We'll see you on the next episode, and until then, keep playing your guitar and have fun making music.